Here we are. I don't see myself. Should I start anyway? Wait. Okay. I saw a finger. Hey! Oh, wait. Hey! There we go. Woo! There we go. Welcome to our Friday night Torah study and praise party. We're just losing our minds in here. It's awesome. So welcome to our Friday night Torah study. We started the night off with Erev Shabbat and liturgy at 6 p.m., and we had a good time fellowshipping and having wonderful food. Robertson made some phenomenal leftovers. She warmed up from the feast, so for all of you that went home early, you missed it. It's amazing. For you visiting, yes, we're crazy, okay? But we enjoy it because we do it for the glory and the honor and the appreciation that Yahweh has given us the Sabbath day. And we started out together and we ended together. So we do this every Friday night at 7:30, again starting with Erev Shabbat, liturgy and a meal at 6 o'clock. And then we tune in live with you here for Torah study. So just a few, if it's your first time joining us, just let you know what we do and how this goes. So we have the scripture reading, the Torah reading for tonight is Shemini, which means eighth, which is Leviticus 9:1 through 11:47. There are 7 readings. So what will happen is we'll open up the service, as we have already, with maybe a few announcements and prayer and praise. So it's very interactive. So if you're online, you can start typing in your praise or your prayer now. The Shamish team is in the room and monitoring the room. So if you want to do that, you're welcome to do that as I go through the rest of what we're going to do. So each reader is going to come up. I'm going to say a blessing over them. They're going to read their portion of the Torah portion for tonight. And after all the readers have gone through the Torah portion, we're going to do a blessing over all of the readers, followed by some announcements by Mr. Grayson Gardner. And then Rabbi Steve will come out and conduct the Midrash and a Q&A. What are we looking to do when we go through these Torah portions? We're looking to find things we can apply to our lives now, today. So you should be looking at what you can glean out, points you can take. So get your pen and paper or get your finger on that pause button so you can pause it if you need to so you don't miss the good stuff. And trust me, I tell this, I mentioned this during the Passover and Hag HaMasot when we just had our feast. Me personally, I don't take notes while I'm going through. When it's live, I don't take notes while I'm here, so I can't pause it. But I don't take notes. I go back later and take notes and listen to it again so I won't miss anything. Because you know how Rabbi goes. He'll go, he gives us so much, which is amazing. And if you stop to take a note, you might miss the next nugget. So I don't take notes in the teaching or in the study. I wait and then go back and take notes because there's so much to glean and you don't want to miss anything. So hopefully that helps. So we're going to start here locally with prayer and praise with Mr. John. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Elder Billy. I have a few things. First of all, thank Yah that it's finally Shabbat.
Amen.
It's been a rough week. Yesterday, my boss was tempting me. He needed people to work on Saturday. He says, I'm willing to give you $60 an hour plus PTO time for the day if you work on Shabbat. I said, no. You can give me $1 million. I won't be working on Shabbat.
Amen. No temptation there. But he tried.
Yeah, at the end of the day, he said to me, that was a test. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to offer you that at all.
Wow. Look at that. See?
And then I also put in for a new job posting on my line. A testing job. Mm-hmm. It goes up to $19.75 an hour from $18 an hour.
Wow.
So seeing how Yah works with that.
Amen. We can certainly pray for that. Awesome. Great praise, John. That's awesome. And then we have John. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Elder. I didn't want to break it. I just had to keep it going.
The next one is John, too. It's fine.
Yeah,
perfectly okay.
I was trying to help you because, anyway. I have a prayer and a prayer, or I'm going to say it this way, praise and a prayer. Because I've learned I need to tell people the right order because they get really concerned. So I still have a job.
Amen.
I found out Wednesday night I logged on, after we got back, and they had some layoffs on our contract, and a couple people that I'm close with, that I work close with, that are they got cut, and their last day is coming up next month. And so my praise is that I'm still employed, and that happened actually on the first day of the feast, on the high day. So,
Amen.
praise Yah, and just prayers that we can keep up with the work, and also for my friends.
Amen. We can certainly pray for that. Awesome. Next up, Mr. Grayson. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. So I have a praise and a prayer of one of the businesses that I've been working on as like a side project. I'm very, 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 very close. I should have had it done so long ago, but I did it. It's almost ready. And then once that like releases, that's just the beginning, and it's just so much more work to do going forward.
Amen.
But it's something that I'm incredibly thankful for, and just all praises to him that I'm in this position where I can work on these things. Because I really do think that this will be something that will be really beneficial for me in terms of freeing up my time later down the road. And so just prayers for that once I get it out, that I can continue to do the right things in terms of marketing to get it in front of the right people who it'll benefit. And so just prayers for that. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. Super excited for you. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. All right, live stream. What do you got?
Okay, just got a couple. Shamish Gary says prayer request for the Flint family, their health, and also not being there does not feel right. Vaskin prays for an awesome feast with Gibbs and the Hersey families and Kiara. Prayers I can get to Cleveland for Sukkot this year. We have quite a few unspokens. A lot of people that were here at the feast, they just the praises and that they made it home safe, and that the good times they had here. Missing everybody. Shelley Bell praising for overflow and joy Abba gave me today, and continued prayers for my health and for my adult daughters to have their bubbles popped in their lives together. Wayne Smith, still prayers, continued prayers for healing and reconciliation between him and Sally. Tom Lasardo, praise report, my house did not suffer any damage with the flooding here in Fort Lauderdale. They had 29 inches of rain in the last 2 days.
Wow.
Prayers, lots of communities suffered flood damage. Some more people that were here for the feast. NFP, Douglas made it home safe. Some prayers for families, for bubble pops, and for spouses to join their significant others in the walk. Lisa Hersey, prayers for healing for back pain. Roger, he has a praise. This is my religious request was approved to wear my tzitzits at work.
Amen.
And that's all we have for the urgents right now.
Amen. Amen. We also want to keep in prayer all those that have reached out during the feast and the last 2 days. In reference to prayer and praise, we got a lot of emails. Rabbi Tom was working, doing a tremendous job answering them. I mean, they were flying in and he was flying them back out. So praise Yah for that. He does an amazing job. I really appreciate Rabbi Tom. Yeah. And I know he couldn't do what he does without Rebbetzin Joanne there having his back. So shout out to Rebbetzin Joanne who's here, always supporting him, holding him up. And also, don't let us forget our own Rebbetzin Julie, who does such an amazing job as well. She does the MTOI program, and she's still back there holding Rabbi Steve up and giving and getting him what he needs. And so I'm so grateful for these women, and of course my beautiful wife who helps me to be all that I am in the back, hiding in the shadows. Okay, all right, so we appreciate all of our support, because in order for us to do what we do with you guys, oh sure, thank you, I appreciate it. We can't do it without having support ourselves, helping to keep things straight so we can help keep you guys straight. So praise Yah for our spouses. Shout out for the spouses, right? You guys know if you got spouses volunteering doing something that it can be a lot, especially during the feast. But we praise Yah that he gives us the strength to do all that he's called us to do, and he's given us amazing helpmeets to help us to do that, or awesome husbands, if you're the one that's doing it. We all do it together for the glory of Yah, so we appreciate that very much, especially ending a feast and then coming right into Shabbat. Such an exciting time. I know many of you are exhausted. I can look at your faces. Just don't fall asleep on the teaching. You'll get rest Sunday. Sunday, you'll get some rest. All right? We're going to push. We're going to keep this train going right through. All right. So if you're just joining us, this is our Friday night tour study. It starts 7:30 Friday nights, with the exception of feast. Eastern Standard Time every Friday, again, with the exception of feast. Tonight's tour portion is Shemini, which means the 8th, which is Leviticus 9:1 through 11:47. There are 7 readings. I have not forgot about praying. I know that's why the hands went up. You forgot to pray, elder. No, I didn't until I saw your hand. So there are 7 readings, Leviticus 9:1 through 11:47. Rabbi Tom will be our first reader, but first we're going to open up with the prayer for the prayer and the praises that have gone before us. And since John was the first to remind me that I missed that part, he can come up and open us up in prayer. Mr. John Reich. I'm not repeating that.
I'm kidding. Abba, we just thank you for this time we can come together and be here on Shabbat and just get into your word and be able to take in your presence. And we just thank you for Rabbi and what he does to answer our questions and guide us, and Elder for supporting him and giving us the attention that we need. And we just pray over these praises and prayers that we know that you have all things in your hand. And we just thank you and we pray this in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. You can clap. Somebody wanted to clap. Look like, sound like. All right. Rabbi Tom is going to come up. He's our first reader. He's going to start us off in Leviticus 9:1, and he's going to go through verse 12. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rabbi Tom, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of his hands. Amen.
And on the 8th day it came to be that Moshe called Aharon and his sons, the elders of Israel. And he said to Aharon, take for yourself a young bull as a sin offering, and a ram as an ascending offering, a perfect one, and bring them before Yahweh. And speak to the children of Israel, saying, take a male goat as a sin offering, and a calf and a lamb, both a year old, perfect ones, as an ascending offering, and a bull and a ram as peace offerings to slaughter before Yahweh, and a grain offering mixed with oil. For today Yahweh shall appear to you. And they took what Moshe commanded before the tent of appointment, and all the congregation drew near and stood before Yahweh. And Moshe said, this is the word which Yahweh has spoken to you to do, so that the esteem of Yahweh appears to you. And Moshe said to Aaron, go to the slaughter place and prepare your sin offering and your sin offering, and make atonement for yourself and for the people, and make the offering of the people and make atonement for them as Yahweh has commanded. So Aharon came near to the slaughter place and slew the calf of the sin offering which was for himself. And the sons of Aharon brought the blood to him, and he dipped his finger in the blood and put it on the horns of the slaughter place, and poured the blood at the base of the slaughter place. And the fat and the kidneys and the appendage on the liver of the sin offering he burned on the slaughter place as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And the flesh and the skin he burned with fire outside the camp. And he slew the ascending offering. And the sons of Aharon presented to him the blood which he sprinkled on the slaughter place all around.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Tom. All right, readers, you can come up and take your seats. I'm sorry I forgot to invite you up. All right. Next up, we're going to have Sarah Beth. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Sarah Beth, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of her hands. Amen. All right, you're going to take us from verse 13 to the end of the chapter.
And they presented the burnt offering to him with its pieces and head, and he burned them on the altar. And he washed the entrails and the legs, and burned them with the burnt offering on the altar. And he brought the people's offering, and took the goat, which was the sin offering for the people, and slaughtered it, and made it a sin offering like the first one. And he brought the burnt offering, and made it according to the right ruling. He also brought the grain offering, and filled his hand with it, and burned it on the altar, besides the burnt offering of the morning. And he slaughtered the bull and the ram as peace offerings, which were for the people. And Aharon's sons presented to him the blood, which he sprinkled on the altar all around, and the fat from the bull and the ram, the fat tail and the covering, and the kidneys and the appendage on the liver. And they placed the fat on the breasts, and he burned the fat on the altar. But the breasts and the right thigh Aharon waved as a wave offering before Yahweh, as Moshe had commanded. Aharon then lifted up his hand toward the people and blessed them, and came down from making the sin offering, and the burnt offering, and the peace offerings. And Moshe and Aharon went into the tent of meeting, and came out and blessed the people, and the esteem of Yahweh appeared to all the people. And fire came down from before Yahweh, and consumed the burnt offering and the fat on the altar, and all the people saw, and cried aloud, and fell on their faces.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Sarah Beth. Next up, we have Richard. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Richard, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of his hands. Amen. All right, you're going to take us into chapter 10, reading verses 1 through 11.
And Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aharon, each took his fire holder and put fire in it, and put incense on it, and brought strange fire before Yahweh, which he had not commanded them. And fire came out from Yahweh and consumed them, and they died before Yahweh. Then Moshe said to Aharon, "This is what Yahweh spoke, saying, by those who come near me, let me be set apart. And before all the people, let me be esteemed." And Aharon was silent. And Moshe called to Mishael and to Elzaphan, the sons of Uzziel, the uncle of Aharon, and said to them, "Come near, take your brothers from before the set-apart place out of the camp." So they came near and took them by their long shirts out of the camp, as Moshe had said. And Moshe said to Aharon and to Eleazar and to Ithamar, his sons, "Do not unbind your heads nor tear your garments, lest you die and wrath come upon all the people. But let your brothers, or the house of Israel, bewail the burning which Yahweh has kindled. And do not go out from the door of the tent of appointment, lest you die. For the anointing oil of Yahweh is upon you." And they did according to the word of Moshe. And Yahweh spoke to Aharon, saying, "Do not drink wine or strong drink, you nor your sons with you, when you go into the tent of appointment, lest you die. A law forever throughout your generations, so as to make a distinction between the set apart and the profane, and between the unclean and the clean. and to teach the children of Israel all the laws which Yahweh has spoken to them by the hand of Moshe.
Amen. Thank you, Richard. I love his accent. Love his accent. All right, TJ. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless TJ, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of his hands. Amen. You're going to take us from verse 12 to the end of the chapter.
And Moshe spoke to Aharon and to Eleazar and to Ithamar, his sons who were left. Take the grain offering that is left over from the offerings made by fire to Yahweh, and eat it without leaven beside the slaughter place, for it is most set apart. And you shall eat it in a set apart place, because it is yours by law and your sons by law, of the offerings made by fire to Yahweh. For so I have been commanded. And the breast of the wave offering and the thigh of the contribution you eat in a clean place, you and your sons and your daughters with you. For they are yours by law and your sons by law, which are given from the slaughterings of peace offerings of the children of Israel. The thigh of the contribution and the breast of the wave offering they bring with the offerings of fat made by fire, to bring as a wave offering before Yahweh. And it shall be yours and your sons with you by a law forever, as Yahweh has commanded. And Moshe diligently looked for the goat of the sin offering, and saw it was burned up. And he was wroth with Eleazar and Ithamar, the sons of Aharon, who were left, saying, Why have you not eaten the sin offering in a set-apart place, since it is most set apart? And Elohim has given it to you to bear the crookedness of the congregation, to make atonement for them before Yahweh. See, its blood was not brought inside the set-apart place. You should have eaten it without fail in a set-apart place, as I have commanded. And Aharon said to Moshe, See, today they have brought their sin offering and their ascending offering before Yahweh, and matters like these have come to me. If I had eaten the sin offering today, would it have been right in the eyes of Yahweh? And when Moshe heard that, it was good in his eyes.
Amen. Thank you, TJ. Next up, we have Miss Amy. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Miss Amy, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of her hands. Amen. You're going to take us into chapter 11, reading verses 1 through 19.
And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aharon, saying to them, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, These are the living creatures which you do eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Whatever has a split hoof completely divided, chewing the cud, among the beasts that you do eat. Only these you do not eat among those that chew the cud or those that have a split hoof. The camel, because it chews the cud, but does not have a split hoof, it is unclean to you. And the rabbit, because it chews the cud, but does not have a split hoof, it is unclean to you. And the hare, because it chews the cud, but does not have a split hoof, it is unclean to you. And the pig, though it has a split hoof, completely divided, yet does not chew the cud, it is unclean to you. Their flesh you do not eat, and their carcasses you do not touch. They are unclean to you. These you do eat of all that are in the waters. Anyone that has fins and scales in the waters, or in the seas, or in the rivers, that you do eat. But all that have not fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers, all that move in the waters, or any living being which is in the waters, they are an abomination to you. They are an abomination to you. Of their flesh you do not eat, and their carcasses you abominate. All that have not fins or scales in the waters are an abomination to you. And these you do abominate among the birds. They are not eaten, they are an abomination. The eagle and the vulture, and the black vulture, and the hawk and the falcon after its kind. Every raven after its kind, and the ostrich, and the nighthawk, and the seagull, and the hawk after its kind, and the little owl, and the fisher owl, and the great owl, and the white owl, and the pelican, and the carrion vulture, and the stork, the heron after its kind, and the hoopie, and the bat.
Amen. Thank you, Miss Amy. next up we have Miss Dawn. She's a professional. Absolutely. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Miss Dawn, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of her hands. Amen. All right, you can continue in chapter 11, reading verses 20 through 31.
All flying insects that creep on all fours is an abomination to you. Only these you do eat of every flying insect that creeps on all fours. Those which have jointed legs above their feet, with which to leap on the earth. These of them you do eat. Oh, good Lord. Abba locust after its kind, and the Salom locust after its kind, and the Hagal locust after its kind, and the Hagab locust after its kind. But all other flying insects which have 4 feet are an abomination to you. And by these you are made unclean. Anyone touching the carcass of any of them is unclean until evening. And anyone picking up part of the carcass of any of them has to wash his garment and shall be unclean until evening. Each beast that has a split hoof, not completely divided, or does not chew the cud is unclean to you. And anyone who touches their carcass is unclean. And whatever goes on its paws, among all the creatures that goes on all fours, those are unclean to you. Anyone who touches their carcasses is unclean until evening. And he who picks up their carcass has to wash his garments and shall be unclean until evening. They are unclean to you. And these are unclean to you among the creeping creatures that creep on the earth, the mole, the mouse, and the tortoise after its kind, and the gecko, and the land crocodile, and the sand serpent, and the sand reptile, and the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These are unclean to you among all that creep. Anyone who touches them when they are dead becomes unclean until evening.
Amen. Amen. I think it died. Those guys. Okay. That one's not on. I got you. I think I got you. Got the other one. Well. Hello.
Yeah, we'll switch.
All right, switch again. All right. Sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties, but they're on the job. They did it on purpose. Okay. Our last reader, Miss Laura. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Rabbi just popped out and made one of his famous faces, okay? He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Miss Laura, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of her hands. Amen. All right, you're going to take us from verse 32 to the end of the chapter.
Okay. And whatever any of them in its dead state falls upon becomes unclean, whether it is any wooden object or garment or skin or sack, any object in which work is done, it is put in water, and it shall be unclean until evening. Then it shall be clean. Any earthen vessel into which any of them falls, whatever it is in it becomes unclean, and you break it. Any of the food which might be eaten, on which water comes, becomes unclean. And any drink which might be drunk from it becomes unclean. And on whatever any of their carcass falls becomes unclean, an oven or a cooking range, it is broken down. They are unclean and are unclean to you. But a fountain or a well, a collection of water, is clean, but whatever touches their carcass is unclean. And when any of their carcass falls on any planting seed, which is to be sown, it is clean. But when any water is put on the seed, and any part of any such carcass falls on it, it is unclean to you. And when any of the beasts which are yours for food dies, he who touches its carcass becomes unclean until evening. And he who eats of its carcass has to wash his garments, and shall be unclean until evening. And he who picks up its carcass has to wash his garments, and shall be unclean until evening. And every swarming creature, the one that swarms on the earth, is an abomination. It is not eaten. Whatever crawls on its stomach, and whatever goes on all fours, and whatever has many feet among all swarming creatures, the ones swarming on the earth, these you do not eat, for they are an abomination. Do not make yourselves abominable with any swarming creature, the one swarming, and do not make yourselves unclean with them, lest you be defiled by them. For I am Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall set yourselves apart, and you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. And do not defile yourselves with any swarming creature, the one creeping on the earth. For I am Yahweh, who is bringing you up out of the land of Mitzrayim to be your Elohim. And you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. This is the Torah of the beasts and the birds and every living being, the creeping creature in the waters, and of every being that swarms on the earth, to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean, and between the living creature that is eaten and the living creature that is not eaten.
Amen. Thank you, Miss Laura, and thank you to all the readers. Let's give them a hand. Great job. Now we have the blessing after the Torah reading. Blessed are you, Yahweh our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen, amen. All right, Grayson is going to come up and take us through the announcements. Let's give a hand for Grayson Gardner.
Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to start off by welcoming our guests. As children of Abraham, we'd like to exemplify his world-renowned trait of hospitality. And for our guests, while we will be doing our best to treat you as guests, we would appreciate it if you would behave as guests. And so even if we're doing something you disagree with or you think we're wrong, we would appreciate it if you could conduct yourselves in a Yeshua-like manner. And for our guests, everything that I'm about to mention that we do as a ministry is 100% free and there to be a blessing to those who will find it. With that being said, we do 2 live streams every week, the first being our Shabbat service. This takes place every Saturday live here on YouTube at 1:15 with the sounding of the shofar, and the service typically lasts for a little bit over 4 hours, going until around 5:30. The second live stream that we do is our Torah study, which is taking place right now. This service starts at 7:30 p.m. following our Erev Shabbat meal and small service that we do here locally. And so this service lasts for around 2.5 to 3 hours and begins with the word being read and is then followed by a midrash portion with our rabbi, where he'll come out and go over the notes that he has for the Parsha, and then the floor will be open for any questions and comments on things that were not covered. And so if you want to follow along with us as we are going through our Parsha schedule, we do have it available on our website. To find this, you can go to MTOI.org, and it will be under the Media tab. There you will find that we have the Torah, Haftorah, as well as the Brit on a cycle. Our Brit is on a 4-year cycle, so each year we will be reading one of the Gospels and then the rest of the Brit. And so again, that is available at MTOI.org under our Media tab if you want to follow along with us. And so while we have our rabbi to ensure that we're understanding the Torah portion at our level, we have our very own MTOI Parsha Pearls program to ensure that our children are able to understand and learn the word at their level in a way that is both fun and engaging for them. And so this does have its very own website. This is an incredibly robust program where everything is made by us for us. And this is led by our very own Rebbitzin Julie and her amazing team. The program is broken up into 2 different age groups. We have our Gem Seekers or Katan Aleph, which is ages 5 through 8, as well as our Pearl Seekers or Katan Bet, which is ages 9 through 99 plus. And we put 99 plus there because we believe that because of the immense amount of value that are put into these programs, that regardless of how many years you've been in Torah, that there will be something for you to glean from it. Especially if you're somebody who is fairly new and you're just starting out, this is an incredible resource that you could take advantage of. So each lesson includes child-friendly stories and lessons, lesson questions, Hebrew word studies, memory verses, word searches, crossword puzzles, mazes, crafts, notebook pages, coloring pages, songs, and a snack that are all related to that week's Torah portion. And so these are posted on Sundays, so they'll be available for you to use throughout your week, as well as on Shabbat, as it is guaranteed to take up a fairly large amount of your child's time, and is what we teach upstairs in our Shabbat school that we do here locally. If you're somebody who enjoys listening to the word read, we do have audio scripture readings available on our website. You can find this by going to MTOI.org, and it'll be under the Media tab. And this is done by our very own Shira Wendling. Shira's done an amazing job reading from Genesis to Revelation in her own narrative style. And for the first 5 books, she even broke it up by Torah portion. So if you want to listen to next week's Parsha in advance, you could go to MTOI.org, and you can find it under the Media tab, and you'll be able to access the Parsha from there. We do upload on YouTube every weekday, and everything that we upload on YouTube is also accessible through our MTOI app, which I'll be talking a little bit about later on. And so starting with on Monday, we have our first look. And so this is sort of our movie preview for the full teaching that will be posted later in the week. This is powerful sound bites that are taken out and put together to really just get you into the right mindset to receive the full teaching that will be posted later in the week. On Tuesday, we have our MTOI shorts. So these are 10 1-minute or less videos and just powerful sound bites that have been taken out and can really help you get into that sense of vertical connection in just a fraction of the time that it would take to watch a full teaching. So if you're somebody and you find yourself with a few minutes left in your day, I would highly recommend you use this as a resource, as again, it can help get in that sense of vertical connection around certain topics in just a fraction of the time that it takes to watch a full teaching. And so we have 10 of these which are posted on our YouTube, as well as some additional ones that are posted in our app, and those are under Rabbi Trails. On Wednesday, we have our full teachings which are being posted, and so we are currently going through the Pesach readings and midrashes that have been recorded from that week. And so following each teaching, we have our Afterburns, which are posted on Thursday. And so the Afterburn is about an hour-long question and answer time following each teaching to make sure that we received the message that our rabbi was trying to teach us. And so people will ask questions and give comments, and then our rabbi will make sure that everybody understands what he was teaching. And it ends up being an almost mini teaching of its own. And so every Thursday Afterburn is connected to that Wednesday's full teaching. On Friday, we have our In Focuses, and so these are short 5, 8 to 10 minute long videos where our rabbi really covers the subject in just that amount of time, and so we pull it out and we make it a video of its own. And if while you're watching this, you want to get the full context from the full teaching that it's from, there will be a link on the side that you can click on if you are interested. Aside from YouTube, we do post on multiple other social media platforms, including Facebook and Instagram. Our Facebook is MTOI Worldwide, with our Instagram being slightly different at MTOI_worldwide. And I would recommend you turn notifications on if you are following those, so that way you can stay up to date with what we have going on here. Another app that we post on is our very own MTOI app, which currently has 2,570 downloads. And if you are downloading and taking advantage of this incredible resource that has been made available to you, as is everything MTOI all in one place, I would highly recommend that you turn the notifications on, as this app is a way for our leadership to make sure that if they have a message that they're trying to send us, this is an incredible resource and tool that they can use to do that. And so in order to make sure you don't miss any of the messages that you are supposed to be seeing, I would recommend you turn the notifications on. And so in order to do this, you're going to click on the small icon in the top right, and you're going to go to App Settings and then Notifications, and you are going to want to make sure that your general is slid to green. And then you should be good to go. An additional program that we offer as a ministry is our Torah Teens on Zoom, and this takes place every Thursday at 1 p.m. as well as 9 p.m., and this is led by our very own Rabbi Tom Mitchell. Rabbi Tom's done an incredible job creating a space where the teens feel like they can not only open up and connect with each other, as well as the Word, as well as establishing how to have that proper relationship with a member in the vertical structure. And I've heard absolutely nothing but amazing things. But this is a program that is for teenagers. So if you're below 13, you should not be in the room. And if you're above 19, you should not be in the room. If you're a parent and you're concerned about what your student might be learning, that's fine. Just make sure that you are off camera, as Zoom is a video chat format, and we want this to be a space where the teens feel like they can be themselves and not feel like they have to edit. And they're going to be more likely to do that if there is another adult in the room, and so we want to keep that to a minimum. So just make sure you are off camera. And then once you feel comfortable with what your child's learning, feel free to step out of the room so that way they can experience the class for themselves without you there. As an international ministry in an effort to serve people around the world while it's Shabbat where they are, our rabbi has broken the world up into different zones, with each zone having about a 2-hour-long question and answer time with our rabbi. So the next one we have coming up will be on May 6th, and this will be our Zone 1 live stream Shabbat Q&A, and this will be taking place during the regular service time live here on YouTube. And so if you are living in United States, Canada, Mexico, South America, Central America, or the other islands in that general time zone, and you do not attend here locally, this is your Q&A and your opportunity to ask questions. And so that full 2 hours will be devoted to taking questions from there. And so this is Zone 1, which means that it is the first Shabbat of every month. And so it alternates between the live stream and then Zone 1, people who are able to attend here locally. And so this next month is the live stream. And again, that is May 6th during the regular service time. Following this, we have on May 13th our Zone 2 Shabbat Q&A, and this will be taking place on Zoom at 10 a.m. EST before our regular services. And so this is on Zoom, and so if you want to participate, you are going to need to send an email to zoom@mtoi.org, and then an auto-response link will be sent to you, and then you'll be able to access the room from there. And so Zone 2 is United Kingdom, Europe, Africa, and the other countries that are in that general time zone. And so those are the people who will have priority in terms of asking the questions, but everybody is more than welcome to come and listen to the answers. And so again, this is Zone 2, and this will be on May 13th at 10 a.m. EDT. Following our Zone 2 meeting, we have on May 19th our Zone 3. And so this will be that third Friday of every month, as it is Zone 3. So that will be following our Torah study that will be done here locally at 10 p.m. That zone meeting will be for Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Philippines, Malaysia, India, China, and Fiji. I believe are some additional countries in which we have people in attendance from. But again, those are the people who have priority in terms of asking the questions, but everybody is welcome to listen to the answers. And so if you want to participate, to come and to listen and to receive the gift that is waiting for you in these meetings, you can email zoom@mtoi.org, and then you'll be able to access the room from the link that you will receive from that auto-response email. If you're somebody who's not comfortable asking a question in a zone meeting or by calling the offices, we do have a Contact Us page available on our website, as well as an email, questions@mtoi.org. And so, if you have something that is time sensitive, which means in the next 1 to 2 days, the information will no longer be of use to you, I would highly recommend you call the offices, as that is the best way to get in touch with leadership in a timely manner. So we have our Omer Count Challenge, and can anybody tell me what day it is? Day 8, you would all be wrong. That was yesterday, as the sun has set. And so it was day 8, which means that we should have been focusing on joy as it relates to self. But we are now in day 9, which is centered around joy as it relates to our relationship with Yahweh. But congratulations to all of you for being so close, and at least you were completely off and you were paying attention. And so congratulations to all of you. It was a little bit of a trick, but it worked. And so some additional dates that we have coming up are on April 16th. We have our leadership meeting, and that would be this Sunday. And so the people who will be in that meeting know who they are, but we should all be having this as a date that we pay attention to, as we should be praying for our leaders. These are men that are gathering together from all around the world, taking hours out of their day with the sole intention of working together as effectively as they can to serve the body and the Father to the best of their ability. And so we should be praying for our leaders. On April 21st, we'll be having our Rosh Chodesh for the month of Iyar, and this will be taking place during the Torah study around 8:30. And then next we have coming up Shavuot. And so we will be celebrating that here locally in Cleveland, Tennessee from May 25th to the 28th, and registration is available. Not only is it available, but we have over 80 people registered, and we need to get all of the people who are planning on attending registered. And so I believe the cutoff date is May 5th, which is just 3 weeks away, but I would highly encourage everybody who knows that they're going to be attending to do their best to get that in this week, as there are critical decisions that need to be made in terms of spacing, and those decisions will be much easier the more accurate number our leadership has going in. And so if you know you're attending, I would highly encourage you to get that registration in this week and not wait to be last minute. And so you can do this at mtoi.org/Shavuot, as well as if you are here locally, we do have some by the offering box. And so I believe that is all for my section of the announcements. Please help me and welcome up Rabbi Steve.
All right. All right. Yes, when the microphones were working poorly, I did stick my head in here. And actually, for those of you who were in there, the camera did catch me actually coming in because it was on Laura coming up to read, and it was kind of funny. But anyway, I know all of you who are watching already know how much fun this is if you have your closed captioning on. Like when somebody may have said something and Billy goes, Amen, and it says, oh man. During prayer time, that's especially funny. Someone says something, goes, Amen, and it says, oh man, like, oh, what's he thinking? There are some interesting things. All right, so with the announcements, again, just want to add 1 or 2 things real quickly. The one thing about Shavuot, okay, look, we have 80 people signed up. I don't know why anybody clapped. There's 200 of you here. We should have 200 people signed up, at least, plus the people that are coming from out of town. And so, let's not be every feast, if you know you're coming, and I don't know why you would think you're not coming, especially if you live here, right? Why you would not get your paperwork in right away. Because I know that there are people who get theirs in who are just really tired of hearing me say this every week leading up to a feast, because they already got their paperwork in. So please, let's do that. Don't make me beg for all that. See, because I have some interesting decisions I have to make. One of them is, if we have everybody who's here come, plus 100 plus or so from outside of here, we're not going to really fit very well in this space right here. On the other hand, I could leave the tent up and we could use that because it's still out there. Only problem is it'll be broiling in the tent, which means I'd have to figure out how to keep the tent cool, which can be done. I just got to figure it out. But that's an expense I don't want to have to make unless I have to, right? So it would be really helpful, since it's not an emergency for me to take the tent down right now. The guys who take it down for me said they're okay with that. I would be really helpful if you guys would, especially if you're coming from out of town as well, please let us know you're coming, all right? Please let us know you're coming. All right. And by the way, just for those of you that might say, like we do for other events, well, what if I only come for the holy day and the Sabbath? That's the whole event. Okay? People are actually asking for like discounts and stuff. I was like, but that's the whole event. Well, I'm only going to be there for the holy day and the Sabbath. Okay. So the fee is the fee. All right. So it's just one of those weird things. All right. Now, okay, because otherwise, just so you guys know, if we get too many people, we're going to have to take the chairs and put them over here, and there won't be any dancing space. Is what it is. Okay, but it'll be air conditioned in here. Okay, so we can handle that. Well, the problem is we'll just have to keep turning the room over to eat. Okay, we'll have to take the chairs that way, move them out, put the tables in. It's much better if we don't do that in here. But I really don't want to put us out there if we're not going to have enough people to make that the way we need to go. Okay, so just, these are decisions we have to make. All right, last thing that was not in the announcements, because I totally forgot about sharing it with you, is I have a really interesting and exciting opportunity on Wednesday. We have in the past had a relationship with the Givelify people, okay? And they're great. And we only switched away from them because it actually became financially a better option for us to go where we went, to Subsplash. But I have a really, really good relationship with one of the vice presidents at Givelify, okay, who came, met with me, an elder, and we had lunch. And so for whatever reason, he loves what I do. Okay, he's always talking about me to those guys. And they have an international leadership meeting every month, okay, with hundreds of leaders, over 100 leaders from around the world that come and talk about, and there are all kinds of denominations and different belief systems, because remember, Givelify is really about people with belief, but they have people from a lot of different beliefs that are in there. And they have asked me to come and speak this month. So, yeah. It already started off interesting since the guy interviewing me, his name is Hare Krishna. Not his belief system, just his name. Really nice guy, really nice guy. So it's going to be an interview format. It's going to be on Zoom. And I said to him, well, we do Zoom on a regular basis with over 100 computers logged on, so I'll be used to seeing multiple pages of screens and stuff like that. And so we're going to go for about 30, 40 minutes. I said, I'll try. I can't promise you it'll be that short, but I'll try, all right? And they want to know about our ministry and about what we do and that kind of thing, but also they were asking things about Passover, so I'll get to share a little bit about Passover, including one of the questions was, well, like, is there anything that anybody and everybody, no matter who they are, could get out of Passover? And I'm like, well, actually, it's the opposite of what Passover is all about. It's meant for a very unique group of people to, So you can learn something from that, yes, but it's a covenantal sort of engagement as opposed to a public offering like the rest of unleavened bread or the rest of the holy days. So it'll be interesting to share that, with people and see how that goes around. Plus, it might be also interesting to share that the Last Supper was not, and help them understand that it was not Passover. So I also mentioned that they can ask me, about the 4 cups, and then we can go through the metaphor that Exodus 6 through 8, gives us with the idea of the 4 cups. Okay? So anyway, so just keep that in prayer. I think it'll go very well. I mean, they invite somebody in to speak from different organizations, which is interesting because we're no longer using them really that much. I mean, some of you still use them, but because we don't really use them, it's still interesting that they wanted to bring me in. Okay, their tech team also wants to talk to me about like what they could do to maybe earn our business. And I said, well, I'll certainly let you know what's going on. So anyway, so just keep that in prayer. I'm really excited about it. That'll be on Wednesday morning, I think, coming up. All right. Let me just look if there's anything else. Nope, that's it. All right. So this week's Torah portion brought to you by some food enterprise, because it's all about food. Brought to you by Hungry Stomachs Everywhere. All right. So Shemini. Shemini means eighth, right? It means eighth. And it covers chapters 9 through 11 of Leviticus. All right. So as you are studying, as I know you all are, for your Israelite citizenship exam, I'm going to spring it on you one of these days. I'm giving you an advance heads up. Knowing where the laws around kashrut are will be on the test. You should at least know the chapter that these things are in. You should know where the feast days are listed. There are things that you should just know where the chapters are. You may not have to know, I'm not going to ask you like specific verses necessarily, although I might ask you a few that you should know. But you really should know that Leviticus 11 is where you get the kashrut laws. All right? That's one of the few Torah portions where almost everything you need to know about a subject is there in that Torah portion. Because chapter 11 tells you in detail, very specifically, what you can eat and what you can't eat. So it's very comprehensive. But we have some fun happening before we get to chapter 11. And really not fun. We've got some foolishness that leads to death. So you have in chapter 9, now again, we've talked about context many, many, many times. One of the key elements of context is that you have to understand that the flow of what's happening doesn't necessarily flow according to the breaks in the chapters. Okay? I don't know who got to decide that, when they got to decide that. Somebody decided to put chapter breaks in these places. And so I think this is one of those places where the chapter break doesn't help us very much to understand what's happening. Because at the end of chapter 9, Moshe and Aaron, in verse 23, go into the tent of meeting, and came out and blessed the people, and the esteem of Yahweh appeared to all the people. And fire came out from before Yahweh and consumed the burnt offering and the fat on the altar, and all the people saw and cried aloud and fell on their faces. And so this was an incredible event. And then we say, okay, that's enough of that. Let's go to chapter 10. Well, no, chapter 10 is literally the next thing that's continuing to happen. It says, and Nadab and Avihu, the sons of Aaron, right after this happened, took their fire holders, put fire in it, put incense on it, and brought the unauthorized fire before Yahweh. That's the word strange there. Should be better translated unauthorized. Because Yahweh's looking down saying, that's strange. I didn't authorize that. Okay? So let's use unauthorized more appropriately here. So they brought this unauthorized fire before Yahweh, which he had not commanded. Again, emphasizing that it wasn't authorized. And fire came out from Yahweh and consumed them, and they died before Yahweh. So instead of consuming the offering, it consumed them. So this is it's a terrible event. So we're to learn some lessons from this. I hope we can learn some lessons from this. Now we do see in verses 9 through 11, it says, do not drink wine or strong drink, you nor your sons with you, when you go into the tent of meeting, lest you die. A law forever throughout your generations, so as to make a distinction between the set apart and the profane, between the unclean and the clean, and to teach the children of Israel all the laws which Yahweh has spoken to them by the hand of Moshe. Now, by the way, even though Yahweh spoke to them directly at Sinai, he always still refers to what he gave them was by the hand of Moshe. It was his words by the hand of Moshe. That's the structure he's always worked with. Okay? His words through a person. Now, so we may, context-wise, etc., we may conclude that drinking was Nadav and Avihu's problem. And it may have been. It does not say. Okay? What we can see, though, is that drinking wine or strong drink will impair your ability to make a distinction between the set apart and the profane. So maybe that was the problem. And between the clean and the unclean, and the ability to teach the children of Israel all the laws which Yahweh has spoken. That's what he's trying to tell us in verses 9 through 11. But we're getting, though, in verses 1 and 2, is that you don't get to do what you want and think it pleases Yahweh. Look, this is a big problem. This is within all those who claim to believe something about the Almighty from a Judeo-Christian point of view, okay? In other words, they use the Bible as their authority. Because there are people who use other things as authorities, but the ones who use this, there's some really interesting things that they think are appropriate or we should be doing that Yahweh never authorized. Look, we see a few times when that happens. We see this calf being made. He didn't authorize the calf. They put his name on it. What happened after that? A bunch of people died. You got two geniuses here. And by the way, why did they do what they did? Pride and ego more than drinking. They just saw their uncle and their father, go in, come out, this incredible thing happened, and the people just went nuts. They were like, oh. And so they said, oh, wow, let's go do that ourselves. We can get the people to think we're all cool, too. Again, misconnecting the role that the men of Yah have. Moshe and Aaron were not to be impressed with at this point. It was what Yahweh did that was impressive. Moshe and Aaron were simply the servants doing what they were supposed to do. But see, yet over and over again, and you may know some people, you may be one of them, who thinks that somehow getting into ministry is an impressive thing. And you want to be in ministry so that people will be impressed with you. I can tell you, I know a lot of people in ministry, and most of them, very few people are impressed with them. Not a whole lot of people necessarily impressed with me. Some of you are, some of you aren't. Because the more people that might be impressed with somebody, the more people also think the opposite of. But mostly, people are just indifferent or just not overly impressed with most people that try to put a microphone in front of their mouth, because it takes a very special anointing and gift, and it has to be Yahweh that's through them, right? And if it's Yahweh through them, it's still Yahweh through them. It's not them. But yet, there's a lot of people that think, man, I want this job. I won't out the guy because I can't remember his name. But there was a guy who had a congregation in the Carolinas. Big congregation by what I thought was big, because back then my congregation was like 40 and his congregation was like 120. That seemed like a mega congregation to me, okay, when it comes to Messianic. But he saw these traveling speakers and their popularity on the circuit, And you know who I'm talking about. They're these guys who go around and you see them at every conference and that kind of thing, and they go to people's congregations. And I'm not picking on those guys, but he saw that and said, I want that. Wait a minute, you have a congregation over 100 people that need you if that's what you're supposed to be doing, and yet you want that. So he decided to quit his congregation and go travel and speak. I'd heard him speak. He wasn't necessarily all that impressive, but it's what he wanted, right? And actually, the one time I heard him speak at a conference, he was completely wrong as far as I was concerned about what he taught, because I would have taught completely the opposite of what he said. However, he wanted that. He wanted the reaction of the crowd, the people, like these two here, Nadav and Avihu. Okay, he wanted that. Now, sadly, very quickly after that happened, he cheated on his wife and ended up with nothing. This is what happens when pride and ego is all out of control and in the wrong place, okay? Didn't understand what we're supposed to be doing. We're here to serve. By the way, serving doesn't mean big crowds all coming up and telling you how great you are. Serving means you're here for all kinds of hours, sitting and listening to people's lives falling apart in front of your face, and you're trying to put them back together, all right? Serving is all the not very glamorous things you do most of the time. Look, I can't deny it's nice when I finish teaching and people might come over to me and say, Rabbi, that just made such a difference in my life. That's very gratifying and feels good. That's a real small part of my day. time-wise. It doesn't take up a very large percentage. There's a lot of just grind in there, okay? And people want to come into this job. They don't understand. You have to come in because it's what you're meant to do as a servant. It's a grind, okay? You find yourself going in through doors wanting to avoid people. Sorry, I caught Elder doing that earlier. He's like, I'm not ready for them. I just ate dinner. Get away from me. All right? I do that too at times. I don't want to deal with you. Because you have to be in a right heart and mind to deal with the challenges that people are. Okay, you guys are very challenging. And I love it, don't get me wrong. So does he. Okay? So does he. But the thing is, the people who want this, like Nadab and Abihu, they wanted whatever Moses and Aaron had. You might say they were drunk. But if they were drunk and it just stirred out their pride and ego anyway. Either way, it was still, they wanted the response. Because it said, and they appeared before the people, and they said they saw the people cried aloud and fell on their faces. But from where they were coming from, people got that response, not gods. Okay? Priests and kings and emperors and pharaohs got that kind of response. People did. And so they just, of course, naturally probably attributed this to their father and their uncle. Look at what they're getting. Look at the power they have. People just falling on their faces. Fire coming down out of the heavens. So this is ego and pride out of control. Okay? So I want you guys to really be, again, as I've said so many times, we talked about it just this week in the teaching, right? Not many of you should be teachers. Nobody should want to be a teacher. You either are or you're not. Okay? Nobody should want to be a prophet. Nobody should want to be. It's not saying that I don't want to do the things I do. I don't do them because I wanted to. I do them because it's what I do. Do you understand what I'm saying? Elder can tell you, others can tell you, when I walk into a situation that's ongoing, it will almost instantaneously fall on me and will happen naturally that I will insert myself to take charge of the situation and fix whatever's going on and make whatever nonsense stop that needs to stop. And it's not something I think to do. It's my job to do. It's what I do. You understand what I'm saying? Okay? I don't think a fish has to think about swimming. Okay? Birds don't have to think about flying. Okay, teachers don't have to think about teaching, they teach. Now, the fact that you like to talk to people about stuff doesn't make you a teacher. Teaching is a skill set that has other people interested, engaged, and understanding what you're sharing. It's a very different thing than just, I like talking a lot and sharing information. Doesn't make you a teacher. A lot of people doing teaching that are not teachers. Now, because you know when you're listening to a teacher when all of a sudden you go, oh, I get it now. That makes sense. That's so simple. Because I can promise you, in reality, nothing that I have found yet in this book, there are things that are hidden. I'm not talking about that. But the things that are revealed are not actually complicated. They've been complicated by misunderstanding, misrepresentation, twisting, bending, and messing with it. But that's where a teacher can show you the simplicity that there is in here. And that's when you go, oh, man, that was so easy. And so let's understand that. It's the same thing like going to a therapist. Anybody can get a license to be a therapist. But not everybody, if you go to them, are you going to get the results you're looking for? And are they going to, look, I didn't go through those programs. I get the license to do that because I'm a rabbi. I get to do a lot of things that fall into that realm. And you know what? I see such tremendous results regardless of the fact that I didn't go get that. Because he's given me that skill set. Okay? Whereas other people with degrees and letters after their names, you can go to them and who knows, you may or may not get what you need because they may not have the gift and talent of it, although they have the certification of it. You know. Look, there will be people out there, because I talk about this a lot, about anointed appointeds anoint other anointed appointeds. And there are people out there saying that I am not a legitimate rabbi. I didn't go to yeshiva. What makes you a legitimate rabbi anyway? What does a rabbi mean? If you listen to the In Focus I did on that, it's just a higher level of teacher than just saying a moreh, a teacher. It'd be like saying the difference between a teacher and a professor and someone with a doctorate, right? There's higher levels that we expect of understanding with those different. They're still teachers, aren't they? Okay? You can go to school and the person in front of you could be a teacher or a professor or someone who's a doctor of that particular discipline. If they had the title doctor, you might expect they know a little more than the person with the title teacher. Wouldn't you? Okay. But ultimately, again, certification doesn't prove anything. All the people you know that are, look, I don't know about you. I know I've been in churches and other places where the person standing in front of the microphone had no talent whatsoever, but they had the certification. Anybody heard a sermon in front of a mic that the person was like just miserably bad at what they were doing? But they went and graduated from the seminary. They went and graduated from the yeshiva, whatever. Any one of you wants to go and get that degree, you can, and then you'll have a license to go start something, do something. Doesn't mean you have any ability to do it. It means you you jump through their hoops and pass their exams, and that's it. But that doesn't mean that you have an anointing. So people ask me, well, how'd you become a rabbi? I was teaching, and the congregation recognized that. They affirmed that. Okay? Which is the way it originally was. They didn't have formal education. I mean, if the most formal that you see anywhere in Scripture is Yeshua walking around with a bunch of guys for a couple of years, teaching them while living life. Okay, and they're not doing that in a schoolroom at a desk and with a marker board or charts or anything else. I mean, he sat and walked through life with them and taught them through life. So just keep that in mind. You should be able to tell whether or not you're listening to somebody with that. Okay? If you have any understanding of music, then you can listen to someone playing music, whether it's an instrument or singing, and you should know whether or not they're doing it well. But of course, if you don't have any context for that, you might not. I'm often listening to people sing, and a note will get missed, and I'll be like, oof. And the person will say to me, what? And I'll say, they just missed. They were flat. And the person looks at me and says, how do you know? Do you know the song? I said, no. Doesn't matter if I know the song. I can hear the key and know that the note wasn't in it. But if you don't have that framework and training, you might not hear that, right? Which again is why I go into often enough why most of the people that try to criticize what I do are just eminently unqualified to try to do that. Because they just don't have the information, skill sets, and et cetera, that would give them, like hearing the person go flat on a note or go sharp. Actually, to know they missed it, to know which way they missed. Did they go too high? Did they go too low? Or did they miss it completely? Did they just jump into a wrong key? Because they may have just missed the note a little bit, then they went high or flat, or flat. They went sharp or flat. But I mean, if they just went to a completely wrong note, they forgot what key they were in. Happens all the time. But you know what? Someone's standing up in front of you, and this happens to a lot of you. I want you, especially you guys on live stream listening. You can find anything on YouTube. Anything. And some of that anything, some of it, will be by people with a talent to speak. And they will sound impressive, have a certain amount of polish to them. Somehow I still haven't developed that, but what can I do? I'm about as raw as it gets. I warned them about that for the meeting on Wednesday. I said, look, you guys need to know, I'm just what I am. I don't have any polish for that. I have a lot of comfort being up here. Done it a lot for a lot of years. But I was always comfortable to be in front of a mic. So that's just something I had. And a lot of people, and they'll say every time they get up, even though they're great speakers, but I get nervous. I don't get nervous. Because I feel like this is where I'm most comfortable. All of you remember when I was really sick a few years ago. When I came out here, I know that scared some of you, I'm sorry. But when I came out here, I was the happiest I'd been in 3 weeks standing here trying to talk to you. And I didn't want to go away from the podium. Everybody who was watching me and my family and Uncle Bob and the rest who were there to keep me alive were like, if he talks one more minute, I'm grabbing him out of there. We're going to get the hook and pull him out. But see, you guys need to realize you can go online anywhere and be impressed by anybody that knows more than you do. Doesn't mean they're right, they just know more. They have more information. They sound impressive. And then what happens is, this is the being blown and tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine, etc. Let's not do this anymore, okay? Let's go and seriously look for those Ephesians 4:11 guys. And then when you find one, listen to that person. But make sure you actually found one. Oh, but Rabbi, how do I do that? I can't answer that for you. Best way I can tell you is stop looking for someone that matches with you. Find someone that matches with him, which may not match with you. Look, I can't tell you in the last couple of weeks, happens every time we have a feast, people have met me first time, but people come up to me and say, I didn't like you very much when I first heard you. Anybody else have that experience, willing to admit it? Okay. There were people who they'll say, you were too this, too that, I didn't like your attitude, didn't like your approach, didn't agree with something you said. Don't select based on that, because remember, you come to this, at least you should be coming to this knowing you're wrong, in general, okay? If you knew and you were right, you wouldn't be looking for anything. You're looking because you knew you were in a wrong place, and you were not learning the right things, and so therefore you were in a place that you were wrong too, because you were doing only what little you knew that they were all teaching. So why all of a sudden does that put you after 5 minutes? Anything under like 10 years is, to my mind, at least like 5 minutes. It's just like 5. So all of a sudden now you're an expert and you're going to straighten out everybody. I got a lady, I wish she would just put her phone number in these letters. Ma'am, if you are online right now and you write to me every other month, whatever, and you yell at me in the letters how I ignore you, but you don't give me a way to respond. There wasn't even a return address to mail you anything. But then you send these letters to me telling me, and then you tell me how wrong I am about everything, and I'm like, what's there to talk about? So I'm going to let you understand, it's not my job to fix everybody's confusion. So if you're confused, and I am aware that you're confused, you can come at me with all that confusion. It's not my job to fix it. If you send me a letter with it, I'm just throwing it out. Oh, you just don't want to hear anything from anybody. No, I don't have time to waste with the garbage that comes out of uneducated people who don't know what they're talking about, who don't have an anointing, and all they have is an annoying. Okay? I mean, they're filled with the annoying. Filled to overflowing. Actually, the lady wrote on the letter, I know I'm a pest. On the envelope. Or something like that. That was it, right? And I'm thinking, then why are you sending me this letter? So I did the thing that naturally made sense to me. I gave it to Elder to read. So, and then he looks at me like, do I have to? Because if I say yes, he'll read it. If I don't, he'll throw it out. So, but this is the kind of stuff that's going on. Let me bring it back to the Torah portion. There's an ego and pride underlying all of this. Okay? There's an ego and pride. Look, there's no ego and pride on my part to throw out what I understand the best I can and believe that that's what he sent me to do. Fine. There's an ego and pride if I start going to everybody else's site and start correcting them, or going on their YouTube channels and start writing comments correcting them. Then all of a sudden I've got an ego and pride. So just keep that in mind, all of you that want to correct me. Okay? If you're right and I'm wrong, make your video. Okay? Now I said that once and I need to clarify. If you're in this group and make that video, you're not in this group anymore. You're welcome to do that because clearly you're not under me. So I'm not mad at you. Go make your video. We had someone do that once and then said, well, Rabbi, you said to make the video. No, not to argue with me and still be in the group. Okay? How many of you want discipleship? How many of you want discipleship? Everybody should want discipleship, right? That's what this is all about. We should want discipleship. Okay, hands down. Here's the deal. In discipleship, I'm telling you from the best research you could ever do, you'll find the same thing. You know what there is zero of in discipleship? Arguing with the teacher. A teacher will entertain a discussion. A teacher will entertain disagreement. The teacher will not entertain arguing. Because understand, if you want discipleship, discipleship works this way. You, not the discipler, not the teacher, but you. Yeshua is the only one that this is the opposite. Okay, Yeshua went and picked his students. Everybody else on the planet, it works this way, okay? Yeshua is the opposite, he's the exception. He handpicked who he wanted. But otherwise, it always worked where the person wanted to be under that teacher because that teacher had something I want. Whether it was learning a skill like fishing or farming or whatever, right? Carpentry, back in the day, you would want to go disciple or be mentored. You'd apprentice or be discipled in a discipline. And then the teacher would have to accept you into the program, so to speak. But that teacher would have thrown you, you know what, right out the door the minute you tried to argue. Okay? You know, picture this. I think it's it's goofy and stupid, but it's a good example. Picture from the Karate Kid. Okay? That's discipleship. Wax on, wax off. Daniel-san started to argue, and he was like, right? He said, no arguing. You don't want to argue, you can leave. All right? And you're all like, oh, but that's not so. You get to pick. You don't have to be here. Nobody made you be here. Well, that's not true. He might have made you be here. No human being made you be here. Okay? I certainly didn't. I mean, I gave you help in getting here when she decided you wanted to be here, but I didn't do anything to make you come here. You're free to go in. You can go listen to anybody you want, go anywhere you want, find any teacher you want. That's all free to you. But don't come here and claim you're in this ministry and that I'm your teacher and then disagree publicly or even privately about what I say. You got a problem with what I say, you need to only bring it to me and nobody else, and then we need to work it out. And either you're going to end up agreeing with me at the end of all that, or you may need to understand that we're not going to be on the same page enough to be doing this, because that's how this works. So no, I know people have claimed about me, oh, if you don't agree with him, it's his way or the highway. No, if you don't agree with me, why are you here? Oh, I know why, because this is what you were taught your whole life is how church works. You find one that kind of works for you, go there for a while, if that doesn't work, you go somewhere else, because you're just finding a place that you're happy and comfortable. No, that's not the way Scripture works, though. Scripture works like you're looking for a discipler who's going to teach you, guide you, discipline you, correct you, convict you, but tell you the truth when you don't want to hear it. Well, I'll tell you the truth even when you do and when you don't. See, that's the whole thing, is that we've been so trained to look for the wrong thing. I believe Nadav and Abihu acted exactly like they expected to act based on the culture they grew up in. In Egypt, seeing some amazing thing happen and some priest doing this and thinking, oh, well, I'm going to run off and do the same thing, it'll happen, whatever. They were not thinking about, we're in a different place now with the real Almighty. We're not dealing with stone and wood and all this other nonsense, clay, gold. We're dealing with the actual creator of the universe now, the one who set real fire down and burned up the offering. This is a whole different thing. They do not understand what they're dealing with. But I think a lot of it has to do with the same problem you have. Think about where they came from. What was their experience up to this point? These are not children, Nadav and Abihu. Okay? These are adults. Because they were among the anointed priests. And so they were old enough to have grown up in Egypt and seen all these things. I want you to know that some of the things you struggle with is because this is how you were raised. Okay? And then what you do is you act drunk, which is verses 9 through 11. Because you're so drunk on your being right, your pride, your ego, me, that you cannot make the distinction between the set apart and the profane properly. You cannot make the separation between the unclean and the clean properly. And you certainly can't teach the children of Israel anything. Not when you're in that place. And by the way, it says, teach the children of Israel all. So you might think you could teach them some things. It's so funny. I watch people all the time trying to teach things. I used to make this case because I used to shave my beard. Okay, used to shave my beard every year so that in the summer I had a clean face, a lot more comfortable. In the winter I had a beard. Okay. And then invariably I would travel at some point to a congregation or whatever somewhere, and there would be somebody that would come and get in my face about Leviticus where it says about not doing certain things to your beard. Of course, that person almost never had seat on. Kind of sounds like a plank and a twig problem. Okay? But see, before you go, and by the way, that's where you take some of the things like from the Old Testament and New to put them together. Yeshua's like, you know what, before you work on that twig in your brother's eye, well, let's work on you first. So before you get all bent out of shape about something you think I'm doing wrong, are you doing all the things you're supposed to be doing? Are you tithing? Are you wearing tzitzit? Are you, do you guard the Sabbath? What are you doing on Saturdays when we're not all around you? Are you at home playing video games? Are you at home? Who knows what you're doing, okay? You know, though, and he knows. But you want to correct everybody. You think, and you get on Facebook and somebody says, and you want to correct them and everything else. I would turn the eyes inward first, okay? Stop all that nonsense. Because that's what would happen. And I would always tell the guy, I said, I'm sorry, what was that? I can't hear you. Your lack of seats is deafening. See, and then I would say to him, the scripture tells you to make seat and put them in the corners of your garments. The scripture tells me what to do or not do with my beard if I have one. It doesn't ever tell me I have to have one. So no, you don't have to have one. But if you have one, you shouldn't do certain things to it. So I wear one because I hate shaving. I finally got my wife used to it, so she likes it. But I wear one, and you notice I keep it fairly short. I don't make a big deal out of it. I wear one because I never want to argue about that stupidity again. And by stupidity, I mean people who want to focus on these things that are their pet little thing to focus on, while they got 6 other much more important things that they're ignoring and not doing right. It's incredible. I mean, I've got so many people that I get grief from, and all of a sudden I'll find out that the reason they can't come to the feast is because they don't tithe. And you've been giving me grief over this other stuff? Look, I know you guys don't love the tithing thing, and you all think every time I mention it, somehow it's about putting money in my pocket. Let's just get to the cut to the chase. It's the simplest of commands, okay? Shabbat is a little bit tougher because it's an all-day thing. Tithing takes 5 minutes or less whenever you make money. Or 5 minutes or less once a month, once a quarter, whenever you do it. But yet, you struggle with that. And you only struggle with it because you haven't addressed the problem. The problem is either you are too greedy about your money, or you just don't want to face the fact that you don't make enough and deal with that. I told you that in the teaching. It's going to expose one of 2 things. If you're struggling with it, one of 2 things are in play, or both sometimes. You just don't want to give money that's his back to him. And the other thing, see, you're okay with the taxes thing mostly because that's your job. They take it out. You don't have a choice. So it's easy for you. As a matter of fact, most of you then will switch into an LLC or self-employed or a 1099, and you're going to screw the whole thing up the first year because you're not used to putting money aside for taxes. You're going to flip out when March, April comes around, and you're like, oh my gosh, I owe $5,000 in taxes. Because nobody did it for you. You got to do it yourself. And then people tell me about it, and I don't have any sympathy. You should have known when you started working for yourself that you have to pay quarterly, or at least have a certain amount of, I think it's like 90% done before the end of the year, period. You should know that. Well, how would I know? Why would you start a business and not know? Why would you build a house and not count the cost? Why would you not understand what is required to do what you're doing? And part of it is paying taxes different than when you were an employee. But see, you're still too immature to understand the responsibility to do it yourself. It's okay when the company you work for does it for you. You don't like it, but then you have no control over it. It's all different when it falls in your lap, and your responsibility. Look, and I do intend to scare you right now. Okay, I do. I really want to mess you up. There's a lot of you in this room that if you don't change right in what you're doing, you're not getting in. I'm just telling you straight up. You are not disciplined enough. You don't own what you need to do enough. You're not mature enough. You don't have control enough over your emotions. You're not getting in. How could you say that? Because, look, I wouldn't want to live with you forever. Why would he? You wouldn't want to live with all of that mess forever. Why would he? You know, he's smarter than us. You know what it's like to live with you guys. The whining, the complaining, the fear, the doubt, the insecurity, the weakness, the laziness, the not owning your responsibilities. That is not going to work in the kingdom. You can fix this, though. See, I wanted to scare you. I didn't want you to quit. I didn't want you to get depressed. I want you to start owning it. Because I'm telling you right now, every day, Elder and I talking, I'm just like, I just don't think some of these people are going to get there now. Because they're just not making the effort. And I can't see putting that mess into a forever suit. Because you're already unhappy with it in a flesh suit. You're going to be unhappy forever with it in a mortal suit? That sounds like hell to me. Putting you in an immortal suit, the mess that you are. Because that isn't going to fix any of your stuff, except that you'll physically be okay. All the other stuff in your life is not fixed by that. Some of you have physical problems. Yes, okay, that'll be fixed. That's not your only problems, though. This was two young men who were immature, and that's ended up in death. And what did they do? They said, oh, we're going to do something we think that, I mean, obviously Yahweh did this for them, for the parents. Well, Yahweh do for us. No, this is what you do. You'll think that Yahweh will bless you doing things you should not do. Well, listen, I forgot to tell you guys this. I listen. Don't ask me why. It's my job, I guess. He tortures me and makes me do these things. So I listen to YouTube and find other ministries every day to hear what other people are doing, okay? So I turn on this morning, and I get somebody had a post. I never heard of the ministry before. Had a post for Passover, so I thought I'd listen just to see what this guy had to say because I'd never heard of him before. Of course, his ministry, that video had a complete, massive 58 views, so it probably wasn't that big a deal. Okay? And he starts off his service, this is from 4 days ago, so it's like, not from Passover, it's like in the middle of unleavened bread, right? From 3-4 days ago. He starts off reading a text. He says, I got a text the other day from somebody saying, we want to thank you so much for that spirit-filled Passover Saturday night. I hit pause. I said, what? Spirit? What spirit was filling it on the wrong day? Okay? I mean, I don't care what calendar you're on, it didn't end up on Saturday. Okay? You know why it ended up on Saturday? Because that was convenient for all these people. And a lot of ministries do that. Okay? My mother went to 3 Passovers this year. Normally Jewish people do 2, back to back, 2 nights in a row. She went to a 3rd one on a Saturday night because that's when some friends of hers wanted to do one when it was convenient for them. I mean, and you guys wonder why I get so strong with the righteous indignation. Do you know what's being taught out there? Well, some of you do because you came out of some of it. this man was praising the praise he received for the spirit-filled wrong day Passover. And it's right out there in public for everybody to be confused by. Okay? You know, some people are coming out of the churches thinking they're leaving the mess. They're getting into, that's why it's called the messy annex, because it's full of messy antics. Okay? It's a mess. Yeah, we believe in Messiah, but the rest of it's a mess. It's horrible. All right. So then we get to chapter 11. And I'm not really going to talk a whole lot about kashrut. I'm sure people are going to ask questions anyway. Okay? I do have a teaching out there called Kashrut in Context, although for the life of me, I don't know what I did with the notes for it. I looked for it today so I could print it and bring it with me. I do have one called Kashrut, What is Food, from many years ago that I have the notes for. Look, Leviticus 11 gives you the parameters, the very specific names of most animals you can think of, and tells you what you can eat and what you can't eat. Okay? You do need to go further than this because they take some of these things instead of... See, back then, they didn't produce food. Okay? They didn't process food. You kill the animal, you cut it up or whatever, and you ate the parts that you wanted to eat. Okay? You didn't go out and get something that had an ingredient from another ingredient, and somehow all of a sudden this thing from another animal is in this thing. Like, why is that even in there? All right? So you do have to read the labels on things to see if stuff has ingredients that come from things you don't want to eat or shouldn't eat. Now, that being said, when we look at these chapters here in chapter 11, the bottom line is at the end of the chapter, okay? The last verse says, okay, we'll go to the second to last verse. This is the Torah of the beasts and the birds and every living creature that moves in the waters, every creature that creeps on the earth, to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean. And in case you still think it's about everything still being food, it says, between the living creature that is eaten and the living creature that is not eaten. The other creatures have purposes. They're just not food. Now understand, that verse is in the Tanakh, in the Old Testament. So by the time you get to Mark chapter 7, okay, or Peter in Acts 10, there's no issue about what food is. Now, there is times where he talks about food being clean or not clean, maybe because it was offered to idols or something, but it's still talking about something that was considered food. Food can be contaminated in some way and still be from the correct animal. Okay? So there's never any confusion that some animals are just not food. It's not because they're clean and unclean. Get away from those terms. Let's focus more on pigs are not food. Shrimp is not food. Lobster is not food. Shellfish is not food. Catfish is not food. So it's not that it's clean or unclean. It's just not food. Now, the clean and unclean has to do with if you touch it or come into contact with it, and you were still going to when there was a temple, it would render you tameh or unclean, and you'd have to do something ritualistically to get clean again before you went. So from that context of ritual temple observance, the clean and unclean factors were critical. For your understanding right now where there's no temple is that these things are not food. Period. So it's not, because people want to say, oh no, Messiah made everything clean. No, he never made any. Food is food. Stuff that's not food is not food. Look, he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. I am Yahweh, I don't change. I mean, there is no changing. I'm going to read something I wrote in my notes, which is unusual. I want to discuss here a principle, a basic principle, I wrote this in my notes, regarding biblical study and interpretation. The principle of preservation of biblical continuity. What does that mean? It means that if the Torah establishes a truth in one passage, then that same truth is recognized as valid in all subsequent passages, even if some of the subsequent passages appear to be contradictory. Once a truth is established, All stuff going forward for continuity's sake must fit into that, not the other way around. Christianity screws the whole deal up because they want the old to fit into the new. Doesn't work that way. The new has to fit and is built on and based on the old. Listen now. Scripture cannot and does not contradict itself. People do. People bend and twist the translations to make it sound that way. Good old Zondervan with the NIV put in the phrase in Mark 7, and thus Jesus made all foods clean, which isn't in any translation, any manuscript in Greek. They added that. They put it in parentheses so that they thought you wouldn't notice that. But you're still going to think it was there. You got to look at the Greek and see that it's not there. As a matter of fact, it's not in any older translation. You'll be like, oh, but it says that in my complete Jewish Bible, because the complete Jewish Bible is the NIV. Just has some Hebrew words added to it. It is the NIV. Stern got permission to use the NIV and change a few words to Hebrew. That's what you got. Because everything wrong with the NIV is in that Bible. Okay? Oh, but you went to an MJA congregation, a Messianic Jewish Association congregation, and all of them walk around not with the scriptures, they walk around with the nice light blue CJB, Complete Jewish Bible. I got to tell you what, I stuck out like a sore thumb when I went to an MJA congregation in New York, and I was the only one with one of these. Okay? And one other guy had one, he looked at me and he goes, oh, I thought I was the only one. But then in talking to him, he still was mostly a CJB guy. In other words, his mindset, his thinking was still that sort of Christianized version of the truth. Okay? And don't be fooled. You go to a Messianic Jewish congregation, oh, they're going to look very Jewish. They're not going to sound Jewish at all. Yeah, they're going to say some Hebrew. Yeah, they're going to do some liturgy. Yeah, they're going to have maybe yarmulkes on and talits on. But all of their beliefs are Christian. It is still Saturday doing Sunday stuff. Okay, their belief system is still Sunday stuff. They are still very charismatic because remember the AOG kind of birthed them, gave birth to the MJAA, started off as an arm, an outreach to the Jews from the Assemblies of God. So you get a lot of charismatic, a lot of Pentecostal thought coming out of those places. So we have to understand, Scripture does not and cannot contradict itself. Yahweh has provided us with His Word, and His Word is the same yesterday, the Tanakh, the Old Testament, today, and forever. He doesn't change His mind. You know what? If He did, not that He can't, He won't. And because if He did, then we'd have nothing to hope for, because He could change His mind. All right, forget it. These people are just too much. I'm not dealing with people anymore. Oh, but wait a minute. I saw Moses change his mind. I saw Abraham change. No, this is all tests of testing them. Nothing to do with Yahweh wasn't changing his mind. When he's talking to Abraham about Sodom and Gomorrah, when Yahweh's done, the conversation ended. Not when Abraham was done. Yahweh let it play out exactly like he was trying to figure Abraham out, wanted to see what he had to say. Moses said, please don't kill everybody. Well, he wasn't planning to kill everybody. He wanted to see what Moses felt about it. Because if Moses said, sure, kill them all, then he realized he needed to get somebody else other than Moses. Moses was the wrong guy. Oh, no, but it says that he relented. He doesn't change. We have biblical precedents, and that understanding is that we have to understand the principle of preservation of biblical continuity. Without that, so you say, well, it's just a principle. Look, without it, you have nothing. Nothing. There's nothing to hold on to. If anything can change, then anything can change. Period. Everything we do because we believe what he said will happen. All the things he promised will come to play, come to pass. That's only going to be something we can hold on to if we believe he doesn't change. We may change, we may do all kinds of crazy stuff, but he's the solid rock who never changes. He is trustworthy above all, reliable above all. He says, I am Yahweh, I change not. New Testament says this is Yeshua Messiah, the same yesterday, today, and forever. We just don't want to believe that. So we need to understand, and we have established this in the past, that most, if not all, of Yahweh's foundational truths are found in the Old Testament, in the Tanakh. So anything you're reading in the New Testament, you should immediately want to know, if you don't already know, what did the Old Testament say about this issue? Okay, for all you Christians watching, please put down your anger and everything else. I know your hero is Paul. I like Paul. I think he's great. I hate what you've done with him, but I like Paul. But let's understand, when you're reading Paul's writings, okay, Galatians, Ephesians, Colossians, Corinthians, or whatever, it doesn't matter, Philippians, when you're reading Paul's writings, Romans, you need to understand something very important. Because of what I just told you, you should know what he can't be saying. All right? Because if he is, he's a heretic. Because we have this law of biblical continuity, the maintenance of continuity. So Paul cannot be saying what all you Christians think he's saying. He can't. Well, I guess he can, but if he is, then he's a heretic. You just got to throw him out of the book. So really, I tell people this all the time. You have two choices with Paul. Either he's not saying what you think he is, then you need to figure out what he really is saying. Or he is saying what you think he is, and then that makes him a heretic, and you need to throw him out. You can't make him your hero. Because he's your hero because he lets you believe in Messiah and still do whatever you want. That's why you love him so much. And he also, the way Christianity reads into him, feeds into your anti-Semitism. Even though Paul tells you he's a Jew of Jews, a Benjamite, okay? And you're thinking, well, Judah and Benjamin, separate tribes. Yeah, but they were together in the southern kingdom, okay? And so you need to listen. You need to listen. Paul, if you know the Tanakh, when you read something Paul writes, you should ask yourself, is that consistent with what's written in the Tanakh? And if it is, then it's good. If it's not, then you're confused, or whoever's telling you. By the way, most of you, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm probably right. Most of you understand Paul's writings because of what some pastor somewhere down the road told you, or a parent, family member. You don't understand Paul's writings the way you do because you read it. Matter of fact, most of you just read Paul's writing wouldn't understand half of what he said anyway, because he writes in very challenging ways, especially because all the people who have ever translated him have messed with it quite a bit. So the only reason, and also, have you ever tried to understand a situation only hearing half the side of the conversation? All right, you're sitting next to someone, and they're on the phone, and you're hearing one side. You don't hear the other side. The person's not loud enough. You hear only one side. Anybody ever jump to a wrong conclusion about what the conversation was really going about? Because you only heard one side. Paul's letters are all one side of a conversation. He's not writing a letter like James did and Peter did and John did to the dispersion, like a general letter. People came to him with issues. See, there you go. People come here with issues. See, that's where it comes from. Actually, no, Elder thinks I have issues. That's okay. Because I'll say something just completely off the wall. He goes, man, you have issues. So he doesn't mean issues like challenges. He just means like you have issues. All right. The thing is that people came to him with certain situations and questions and things that needed to be addressed. We don't get to read that conversation. We only get to read Paul's response to that conversation. Somebody either came to him or brought a letter to him, because sometimes they came to him and spoke to him, sometimes they came and brought letters to him, and then said, we're dealing with all this stuff in Philippi or in Ephesus or wherever it was, and we don't know what to do. And so he wrote a letter. Okay, that situation, do this. This situation, knock that off. This situation, stop doing that. Okay? But he only gives us the insight we're getting from half the story, so it's easy to get that stuff wrong. Easier to get it right if you have the understanding of continuity, knowing what he cannot be saying. Okay, he cannot. You cannot stand at Sinai, read about what happened at Sinai, and get to any conclusion at any point that the law would ever be done away with. That's the most absurd conclusion to come from after the moment at Sinai. And then reading all the history until Yeshua of how important the Creator treated the people about his law. I would say he's obsessed. This is an obsession with him, his law. So much so that Yeshua says, if you love me, guard the commands. So much so that I did the teaching, love and Torah, to show you everywhere Torah is talked about, love is talked about too. Everywhere love is talked about, Torah is talked about too. They go together. Everywhere you see it. This is important that we get this, because that's what we see happening in so many of these places. We start dealing with the kashrut stuff. You need to understand, oh, we can eat whatever we want now. Why? Why do you think you can eat whatever you want now? Where was that law changed? Mark chapter 7. You know, they're eating bread in Mark chapter 7. They're not eating meat. And the issue had to do with how they washed their hands or not, had nothing to do with what they were eating. Please read your book. Well, you know, it says in that one place, I think it's in Romans, where it says, you know, one person, you know, esteems one day above another, and another one, you know, that's talking about people thinking I'm more righteous because I'm a vegetarian on Thursdays. That literally is what it's talking about. I'm more righteous than you because I can only eat vegetables certain days. Had nothing to do with Sabbaths, holy days. Oh, but you guys, you don't want to do any of that stuff. So you're going to buy into some pastor somewhere. Oh, Rabbi, you the ego on you? You mean that after all these last 2,000 years, all these guys have been wrong and you're right? Yes, I do mean that. Yes, I do. All right? First time I said that was in what year was that when we were in Nashville also? Probably 2000. 2000 to 2001, had a congregation in Knoxville, Nashville, and in Chattanooga. There was a lady in Nashville, probably was around 99 or 2000, and she got on a phone call with me. It was really talking about life and death and going to heaven and hell and all this other stuff. And I was trying to straighten her out because she was just all having a meltdown because one of her relatives was dying and thought whatever. I said, look, and I explained it to her. The whole Millennium Kingdom thing, I made it clear. And she said to me, you mean to tell me, the same thing I just said, that all these pastors, all these years are wrong and you're right? And I said, yes. And that's not ego. They're just wrong. I mean, after all, the scripture tells us that our fathers have inherited lies. We've been all given strong delusion. Anti-messiahs have come in already. You see Yeshua even talking about that. He hadn't even died yet and that stuff was happening. So, yes, they're wrong. I'm not saying I'm right about everything, but they're wrong about a lot of stuff. And part of the reason why you're here is because you recognize some of that. Okay, that's why you left where you were, because you saw that they were wrong. But you're not willing to allow that all of it was wrong, because there's parts you like. There's parts you want to embrace. There's parts you don't want to let go of. That's your problem, okay? Not my problem. I don't need you to do anything I say. I'm just required by him to say it. Whether you do anything with it or not, that's all on you, all right? So the instructions given in Leviticus 11 are often referred to in Hebrew as kashrut, which are the laws, which means the laws regarding what is kosher. The word kosher means from Hebrew, the Hebrew root word is kasher, which means to be fit, proper, or legitimate, to be straight or right. In other words, to be acceptable. So to kosher something is to make it kosher, so that it's acceptable, okay? So Leviticus 11 is telling us that these animals are acceptable to eat. These other animals are not acceptable to eat, all right? And he's good enough not just to name every animal, but also give us parameters in case the animal is not listed. We know we're looking for a cloven hoof and chewing cud. We know we're looking for fins and scales. We know, in other words, we have parameters, okay? So that when an animal might not be listed, we start looking for these things that he gave us to look for. Of course, you also should find an Ephesians 4 guy to ask when you don't know. Because that Ephesians 4 guy should be doing Deuteronomy 17 type stuff, making decisions, interpreting the scripture for the people. Because we're supposed to have those guys, because it was an important part of setting up Israel in the beginning was Deuteronomy 17. Some of you are thinking, I don't know what that chapter is. I mention it a lot. You need to go back and read it. You know, beginning where it says, and when an issue comes up that's just too hard for you to know what to do. Okay, that's it. Beginning in verse, just to give you the verse, you know where to start. In verse 8, okay? And it goes all the way down to verse 13, which finishes with, and let all the people hear and fear and no longer do arrogantly. Because it said in verse 12, the man who acts arrogantly is to not listen to the anointed, appointed, the priest who makes the right ruling, who stands to serve before Yahweh, or to the judge, that man shall die. That's how serious not listening to the vertical structure was to Yahweh. Now, you should be very thankful we don't do that today. Congregation would be a lot smaller right now. My job would be a whole lot easier. Because a lot of you don't listen. You don't want to listen, and you're stubborn about it, because you got your pride and your ego and everything else, and your excuse for all of it is my personality and I'm this and I'm all that. You know, stop using me as your excuse. Okay? Let's be honest and be real. Your problem is you don't want to do it. It's not about thinking I'm right or wrong. You don't want to believe it's right because you don't want to make the change. That's your problem. The problem's you, not me. I know you want to use me as your excuse. I don't think it's going to play well on Judgment Day. Well, you know, but you gave me that rabbi, and he was an obnoxious jerk. He said, blah, blah, blah. And Yahweh's going to look at you like, look, I gave you the tool you needed. Don't make it. That's just a whiny excuse. You don't get a suit. Go get in line for the fire. Okay? Some of you are laughing. It's not going to be funny at all. Weeping and gnashing of teeth was going to be happening there. But. There's no but. I'll say it one more time before I take questions. You are primarily responsible for all aspects of your life. Stop blaming everybody. Oh, I had my childhood was this, and my upbringing was that, or my ex-husband, my ex-wife, my children, you, the rabbi, blah, blah. Stop blaming everybody. Own you. If you get in, you're not going to get in necessarily because of me at all. I'm not getting anybody in. Your doing it will get you in. Okay? I'm not going to be the reason anybody doesn't get in or does get in. You understand that? If you get in, I don't get credit. If you don't get in, I don't get the blame. I only have to stand up and be responsible for what I did or did not say and how I said it and how I communicated to you. What you do with it is all on you. All right, that being said, we'll take some questions, comments, etc. Now that I went all the way to 9:30. Look, we just went through unleavened bread. We're supposed to be coming out of Egypt, out of Babylon. I think we need some seriousness. Yeah, that mic still isn't on. We got HH2 on? HH1, that one's not on. All right, well then take this one. There we go. Why is HH1 not working? We don't know. All right, we'll figure that out by tomorrow. If we have to, we'll go to 3. We have an extra one. All right, John.
Thank you, Rabbi. I know during this season we have problems of mats outside near the water. Now, if you end up swallowing one or getting used, something like that, is that okay or?
No, you're doomed at that point. You're just doomed. No, look, I'm going to say something, but do not read wrong into what I'm going to say. Eating something that's not food, okay, doesn't kill you. You're only unclean until evening. But continuing to do something and doing it purposely knowing it's wrong, that will kill you. So if you happen to be walking outside and a mosquito flies in your mouth or a gnat or whatever he was talking, anything that's not going to kill you. It might make you unclean if we had a temple, okay? But you will be technically unclean until evening, all right? But that's nothing to worry about with that right now. So, I mean, I would be walking around with my mouth closed a little better.
I figured you'd
There's a
say
swarm
that.
of gnats running around like this. Yeah, I mean, close it up. All right.
Yeah, I figured you'd say that. That's what's going in my head.
Look, every one of us at some point probably will eat something only to find out later it had unclean something in it. It happens to everybody, okay? All right, it happens to everybody. And so, because you can order something and it comes and somehow it had something in it that was the wrong thing or whatever it is, all right? And so it feels awful to have it happen. It should anyway. If it doesn't feel awful, you may have a different problem. It's the choosing to do what you shouldn't do that's going to get you in trouble. If it happens outside of your knowing or outside of your awareness, etc., and then it happens to you, and then you become aware of it, then you make decisions to do a better job next time, so to speak. All right? Because my wife and I ordered Meatball Heroes from this pizza place when we were in New York, and we got them, and mine was a Meatball Hero. Hers ended up being a Sausage Hero. And she'd never had pork. She took one bite and said, "This doesn't taste right." They gave her the wrong thing. Somebody else had ordered two like we did, except they ordered one of each and we ordered two of the same. They sent us the wrong order. She was not happy, okay? But yet, she didn't do it on purpose, didn't choose to do it. And so she's completely fine now. And so that's the thing, though, okay? You can't say, "Oh, well, I can just eat whatever I want because I'm only unclean till evening." Well, then go be a Catholic and confess every week. Just do a few Hail Marys and Our Fathers or whatever you do and just, be happy. I mean, that's the mindset that's just not going to work, okay? I can just do it and as long as I do this other thing. No. If you know to do, or that something is wrong to do and you do it, that's a problem. And if you become aware of something and don't make an adjustment to try to make it not happen again, that's a problem. So we knew now we needed to check our food a little better to make sure we got the right thing. All right, John?
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. All right?
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much. Rabbi, I have a question. It's about how do you deal with people that hate correction and direction? And basically, when you look into these people, they are full of pride, ego. Even when you try to give them guidance.
You just described my counseling list. Elder didn't hear that one. Oh, he did hear that one? Okay. No. Constantine is clapping like crazy. He doesn't even know why he's clapping. All right. Look, everybody we deal with fits into that somewhat. So it's very challenging. So finish your question. So what do you want to know about that particular group of challenging people?
So even when you try to give them correct direction, understanding that this is what I want things to be done, so they take it in a different way, and it leads to chaos or fighting. So how do you deal with such people?
All right. That's a good question, and that's actually a very simple two-part answer, okay? Number one, when we deal with people like this, don't be emotionally invested in what you gave them to do. Right? Because what he said was, when you give guidance or this or that, or you give instruction, and they don't do what you say, and it leads to chaos and fighting and all this other stuff. Do not be emotionally invested in what you gave. An elder can tell you this when he watches me. I am very much strong and confident in everything I tell you to do. I have no emotional investment at all, which simply means that if you don't do it, it doesn't hurt me emotionally. It doesn't bother me emotionally. I will be disappointed, and I'll just think, well, I told you it was going to blow up in your face, and it did, or whatever, but I don't get the strength of emotional response because I'm not invested in it. So I can't take it personally. So number one, stop getting emotionally invested when you share something with somebody, guidance, instruction, or whatever it is. Just give it to them, and it's theirs now, okay? I mean, it'd be like this book. If I take this book and I hand it to you and say, this is yours now, it's yours now. And then if you take the book and toss it in the garbage or something, it shouldn't bother me. It's now yours. I watch parents go nuts because they buy their kid a toy. The toy gets immediately destroyed, and the parent's flipping out because, well, I just spent all this money, bought this toy. But you gave it to the kid. So you know what that means? The kid now doesn't have a toy. No, you're upset because now you feel like you have to buy another one. You know what I never did in my life? I never bought another one. My wife did occasionally, but I always guided against it. I always told the child, well, my toy's broken. I said, well, there you go. You shouldn't have broke it. You should have treated it better. I told you not to swing it around by its whatever. I mean, you know, you warn them and they don't listen and then it breaks. And then you know what I do? I say, okay, sorry about that. Well, I want another one. Maybe I'll get you one someday. You obviously don't know how to handle the one I gave you, and you didn't listen, so now you have nothing. But what happens is you take it personally, like it was your toy. You gave it to them. It's their toy. They want to break and destroy the thing? Well, that's it for them. Just make sure they understand. Once I give it to you, how you take care of it, that's your problem. You don't take care of it, I'm not buying you another one. All right? Now, the wear and tear and normal stuff you might, but I'm saying if it's your fault because you didn't listen and you treated the thing poorly, I'm not just going to get you another one. So that's number one, don't be emotionally invested, okay? Secondly, okay, you said that often when they don't listen, it causes all kinds of chaos and confusion. All right, well then you need to have no, that's not the right word. You need to have a stronger ability to limit their ability to do that. If people don't listen, don't work with people that don't listen. I will not work with people that don't listen. I've thrown a few people out of here because they won't listen. Or I stopped working with them because they won't listen. So you should, you should be willing to work with family members or employees or whatever. If you don't listen, you don't get to stay here. Or if you're not going to listen, I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to stand in the middle of all that noise, confusion, and fighting that happens when people don't listen. See, but the problem is because you're already emotionally invested, you're stuck there trying to fix it and force them to actually listen to you. It doesn't work. I think all of you should know it doesn't work. You've tried, it doesn't work. Okay? So if somebody's not going to listen, look, by the way, all you parents with your 19, 20, 25, whatever they are, if they're not going to listen in your house to the rules of your house, throw them out. Oh, but stop that. Maybe they'll figure it out if you throw them out. You know, there is a system out there to handle anybody that's thrown out. They can find a shelter. They can find a friend's home. They can figure out and get their job that they need. They can fix themselves plenty fine. But you're coddling and enabling them and just being codependent with their junk. If you don't listen, you know what they said? When they were like that in Israel's day, they said they would take them out to the gate and stone them. Did that answer your question, Richard? Yeah, okay, good. All right, Gary.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
In 9/11, after they put the things on the altar to burn, he has to get rid of the skin and the rest of the carcass, and he has to go outside the camp to do that.
Right.
And they were talking about Aaron. Does he have to take all his vestments and everything off to take that out, or does he give it to someone to take out of the camp and burn?
All right, the rules about that were in previous chapters. Okay, when they had to deal with the ashes and other things, they actually had a change of garment they had to make, etc. Okay, but that was in a previous chapter.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, you know what? I was going to announce something earlier. I know it's towards the end here, and we're doing the Q&A. Hopefully, most everybody's still paying attention. But it only was brought to my attention because we're missing somebody who normally comes up to ask questions. So I just need to announce to all of you that Steve Waffle is no longer a part of this ministry by his own choice, and that's all I'm going to say about it. So don't ask me what he did or didn't do or what I did or didn't do. I'm not telling you can't interact with him or anything else, but just so you know, in case you do interact, that he has chosen to go another direction. All right? So I just want to throw that out there. I will mention that again tomorrow for those who are watching on the stream tomorrow, just because he was a shamish and is no longer. Okay? So in case people wonder, well, where, and plus he normally comes up and asks questions and makes comments every week. So Janet, you're on your own now. Okay? And, because usually it's you two that come up. Okay, we wish him well. We're not mad at him, we're not angry at him or anything else, okay? But he's made a choice. Okay, Janet.
Thank you, Rabbi. So when I was reading 9:23, I think it was after the slaughterings and the offerings that the priest blessed the people, right? And so I thought about the blessing that we read to Yahweh for the tithe and the offerings on Shabbat. And at the end, it says something about bringing a blessing to the ones who are obedient in that command. So I don't know, I thought of that after an offering, you also get a blessing from.
Okay, so you're saying that when they went to bring the offering, Yahweh then, he interacted with that by bringing the fire down and, well, yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why, I do what we do with the tithes and offerings, where we have that blessing, is because I believe that when you look at all of the offerings listed in Leviticus, you can see that when people would bring them, there was a whole ceremony involved there regarding certain things that had to be done. And so since we do it this way, I simply ask, that, and I acknowledge and ask him to acknowledge that you're being obedient and doing the things so that you would be blessed, as he has mentioned, like things like pouring out a blessing that cannot be contained and opening up the windows of heaven, etc. Okay?
That's awesome. And when we go to chapter 10, there was, it's verse, I think, 6, when it said something like, do not unbind your head, do not,
I didn't get to cover that.
Yeah, nor tear your garments, lest you die, and wrath come upon all of the people. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about that, lest you die. So what were they supposed to, what was the response that they were supposed to,
All right.
extend instead?
This is normally in my notes. I need to make sure I add it because I don't know how it didn't end in my notes this time. So let me just note it's 10:6. All right, I'll add that. All right, so I normally talk about this whenever we go through the Torah portion. Very important for all of you, and this is going to be really hard emotionally. Okay? Look at what just happened here. The two sons of the high priest, and there were others, but these are his two sons, just got killed in front of him. But they got killed for doing what? Breaking Torah, breaking Yahweh's, and doing something that was unauthorized. And they were told, don't unbind your turban, don't tear your garments. In other words, don't do the normal mourning and weeping. They got what they were supposed to get. Look, he didn't say, don't be sad about it, just don't make a big public display about it, because we need the people to see that you understand that this was correct. Otherwise, they may think that you don't appreciate, or I shouldn't say appreciate, that you don't accept the judgment from above. This is what I want. This is why I'm saying this is going to be hard for you people. All of you who have children potentially have either already dealt with this or will deal with this, potentially, where your child will do some things that are wrong. And then consequences will come on them, and you will throw a fit instead of accepting that what happened to them is what needed to happen. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because that's what that verse is about. He's saying you're in a position of authority. If you're a parent, you're in a position of authority. You need to accept that some of the things that will happen to your children, they brought on themselves. And he didn't say you can't be sad about it, okay? He said to him, but don't unbind your heads, tear your garments, or anything. In other words, don't do this big mourning thing like some terrible thing happened to your children. Nothing terrible happened to them. They did something to themselves. And it was terrible. Do you understand the difference? What happened was terrible, but it didn't happen to them. Okay, they didn't die like a tornado came and sucked up their house or something outside their control. There was an explosion at the factory they worked at or something. They did something actively that brought a consequence. And when your children do things that bring a consequence, it is sad, and it can be terrible. But don't go into a place of like starting to feel like something unfair happened, because that could have easily happened to Aaron. He could have been mad at Yahweh for that. Do you understand what I'm saying? And Yahweh said, oh, no. They got exactly what they needed to get, because everybody needs to see this is not acceptable. All right? Now, do you hear the words I just used? In your house, in this building, wherever there's authority, everybody should know what is not acceptable, and it should be treated as not acceptable. We've had to throw a few people out over the years, not many, because they did things that were not acceptable. Do you understand? And so there were consequences for those actions. Now, you don't have that responsibility. I do, but you do at your own house. If you're a husband, if you're a wife, if you have children, whatever, there are things that are not acceptable. And you have to not lament in a very strong way, like he's saying here, not lament when a natural consequence comes or judgment comes on the action that brought the judgment, or the person that did the action that brought the judgment. I'm not saying somebody did something stupid and something went bad. I'm saying if it's a consequence of the choice. All right? You did something you were foolish to do, you should have known better, you didn't know, whatever, and now you have a consequence. Don't codependent with that. Don't enable it. Don't whatever. I've known people in ministry. I've known people with their children that ended up in jail. And you know what? I knew one who ended up in jail, and I spoke to that person's father, and the father and I had the conversation, and the father said, he's exactly where he should be. And he didn't say it in a mean way. He says he needs to learn this lesson. He says, I hate that he's there. I hate all of this. I'm his father. But he is where he should be. That was a ministry person. Okay? But I happen to have a relationship with his father. Not in a ministry like here, like, a different ministry. I'm just saying, you have to have a recognition that stuff's going to happen to people you're close to, you care about. But sometimes it's what's supposed to happen. It needs to happen. And that includes things like throwing your useless, totally unable to adult child out of your house. Because you should already know, look, if your child is already 35 years old, then being in your house for the last 35 years has not made them better at adulting, then maybe that's the problem. Okay? And maybe you're the problem as much as they are. I've had to tell people with their adult children on their couch to throw them out, and they don't listen, and it went badly. They don't. Some of you know who I'm talking about. You have relatives, and you know I've done that with relatives of yours. And I've been like, why is he still in your house on your couch? He's 27 years old, or whatever the age was. Oh, but he doesn't. Why does that matter? You have a legal obligation and a moral obligation to take care of that child up to a certain point. You could say 18, you could say 20, that's fine. That's it. They are supposed to be taking care of themselves and others at that point. Oh, but they can't. What? They can't. Why can't they? Did you not teach them right? Did you not force them to grow up? I know adults that still don't know how to drive. How does that happen? Okay? I have relatives that are like my age and don't know how to drive. How did you grow up and never learn how to drive? Well, because people did stuff for you and enabled you. You got a kid who's 16, you better be teaching that kid to drive. And that child should be able to take care of himself, potentially, especially if in an emergency, God forbid something happens to you when he's 18. And you should be preparing them for that exit. I don't mean telling them I'm throwing you out, but telling them your next stage of growth is outside my house. And until you get outside, you cannot do that next level of growth. So I'm going to help you be ready for that. And it's not going to take 20 years to get you there. I mean, 20 years on top. Conversation's happening at 16, 17. I've had that conversation with my children. Now, one's getting married and moving out. The other one's getting ready to move out. Maybe not right this second, but he's doing the things that are necessary so he'll be ready. Your child should have their own car, pay their own insurance, have a job. How else are they going to know? And by the way, when they turn 18 and they have a job and all this stuff, stop making them lunch. Stop doing all these other things. Let them take care of themselves. Stop mothering them. Sorry, I looked over at my wife. Mothering an adult is a bad idea. It doesn't do good things, it only damages. Same thing with being a father, okay? You can parent them, but knowing that at that stage it's not mothering or fathering that they need. They need counsel and guidance and mentoring, okay? And they need you to make them do it. When you go out, if it's a family thing, fine, pay for them. Other times, make them pay for themselves. Let them learn how to take care of themselves. Oh, but I feel so bad. But then you'll feel bad a long time because you're going to really create a problem. You are. Okay? Don't rescue everything. They have to have natural consequences. All right, Janet? I have no idea why I went in that direction. It just needed to be said. All right.
I just wanted to say...
Well, because of the verse here, what's going on with not mourning the children. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say thank you at the end for the list that you gave us, the whining, the laziness, the complaining. I was trying to write it all, the not taking responsibility, being immature, not of the
Hey,
dad.
Ben, she's on HH2, and I don't have that. This is not loud enough. Make this louder for me, the wedge. Okay? Make the wedges louder. All right, go ahead.
You were saying that none of those behaviors are going to get in the kingdom. And so and you said, I'm going to make you afraid. And actually, I appreciate that you said that, because there's some things in there that I take responsibility that I'm not doing right, and I need to straighten it up. So I do appreciate your, I don't know if it's scolding or, I take it as an encouragement and the opportunity to see reality and to really see what's the mirror and what needs to be fixed. So thank you, Rabbi, for that.
You're welcome. Look, Yahweh, okay, you know what? You know this in your life. Does Yahweh rescue you from every dumb thing that happens in your life? So why do you try to do that for your children? See, can we admit that most of our growth comes when he doesn't rescue us? And we have to figure it out? You're all reaching out for help, and he just sits there like this. No, figure it out. No, figure it out. And then you learn and you figure it out. Because if he rescued you, you'd be useless. You'd be needy and useless. He rescues you when you need to be rescued, not when you want to be rescued. Okay? All right? I do have a hero cape that I put on if my wife or my daughter or my son needs a hero. I don't put it on just any time they come to me or whatever they need. Okay? Sometimes they need to figure it out themselves. I try to understand how to choose the difference between those. Some of you don't even make an effort. You just rescue everything. That's a blue problem, by the way. No, really, because the blue mindset is nothing should ever go wrong. Everything should be prevented. If there's a way to prevent it, it should have been prevented. As a matter of fact, if something goes wrong, you're not even so worried about fixing it. You want to know why it went wrong, because it shouldn't have. And instead of fixing the problem and dealing with the mess, no, I want to know why it went wrong. My daughter's walking 15 feet behind me in a parking lot. She trips and falls. I'm facing this way. She's behind me. My wife wants to know why I didn't catch her. Nobody's thinking about the fact that she fell. Is she okay? Did she scrape her, whatever. Just yelling at me why I didn't catch her. I was like, I don't know. My back was facing the other way, and I'm not the Flash, and She was 10 feet behind me. But that's why I say it's a blue thing, because you rescue and you rush in because you don't want to allow natural consequences. There should be no consequence because nothing should ever go wrong. Okay? Things go wrong. Stuff happens. I know you wanted a different word, but stuff happens. Okay? And it does. And sometimes it's important that it happens. So you learn to deal with the challenges of an imperfect world. Okay? All right, Chris.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
So I had a question on chapter 9 and also kind of 10. But so the fire that burned up the offering, the right offering, the offering was gone, it was consumed.
Right.
But then the people, if I'm getting that there is a parallel between that and then when the sons of Aaron died, says that they were consumed as well. But in verse 5 of chapter 10, they are taken away, and even the long shirt was not burned, I guess. So I was thinking, is it not more of a metaphorical fire, or was it just not the same way?
Well, we don't know what it means that they consumed them. I mean, the type of fire may have burnt them and just been instantly whatever it burned, and not all the clothing got burned, but they got killed by it. It's not really saying that here, okay?
Okay. And then I had an idea about, I guess this is the last Torah portion from a few weeks ago, but the first part of our Torah portion is the 8th, right? Shemini, 8th. And I was looking at the verses before, and this whole sequence is part of the ordination that had been going on for 7 days. And I was thinking in chapter 8, when there's different points that they are set apart and they do all these ritualistic tasks. And I thought that might be part of why, in some ways, the sons of Aaron were so prideful with so much ego, as they thought, oh, now we're cool, we are anointed in this way, we have some authority, we can do things like with the way we want to do, I guess, like where they got the blood on their tips of the right ears, thumbs of the right hands,
right,
all those kinds of things in chapter 8. And so I thought that could be applied to leadership today, where just because you're in some position, you're not going to overstep, I guess.
Well, that could be a piece of it. I mean, I can certainly see how that could be a piece of it. But, let's understand, the biggest problem here is not understanding that specific things need to be done by specific people in specific ways. That's really the problem, okay? This is something that Moses and Aaron were to do, nobody else, in a very specific way, all right? So the wrong people were doing the thing in the wrong way, and that was a problem. And Yahweh, especially, because some of you people think, man, that is so harsh. I mean, where's the forgiveness and the compassion? Look, when you're launching something, okay, you need to be overly clear and strict to say, this cannot happen. Because if that was not, believe me, nobody did that again, okay? Had it not been that big a deal in the consequence, more people would have been doing it, all right? But that consequence, I promise you, nobody walked anywhere near with any kind of offering without making sure it was authorized. And it was the right person and everything else. That's why these things purge the evil out of the camp. But it's not just because the person who was doing it died. It's because it's a great deterrent to everyone else saying, see what happens? This is what happens. You don't want to do this unless you want to accept the consequences. All right, Michael?
So this conversation that we've had tonight has kind of caused me to take a look at the body and my role within the body and how it relates to the world out there. And we have a slightly different culture, I think. We do relationships differently. We do verticals differently. We do leadership and accountability differently. And so part of the challenges that we've had during the feast are, well, we've counseled about them, so you know what they are. But I'm I'm kind of wondering, myself being somebody who's not particularly assertive, not particularly good at leadership and stuff like that, how would somebody like myself or myself actually, like what are some of the changes that I have to make within myself to be able to properly take leadership over my family, over my household in a way that's actually going to be functional rather than just figurative?
Okay. Well, you're already doing the first thing. You have the right color shirt. It's a joke. Okay. So, how do I kind of give you a good metaphor? If you're, let's say, whatever it is you're trying to be, on a scale of, say, 1 to 100, okay? If you're a 95, getting to 100 shouldn't take a whole lot, okay? But if you're like a 12, it's going to take some changes, all right? So the further you are from the elements, the traits, the characteristics of what you want to become, the more it's going to take to get there. And it's going to take a concerted, consistent effort to work on the various elements that need to be adjusted. Okay? So, in what you're asking, there's two parts to it. The parts you need to add and the parts you need to remove. Okay? So, in most cases, I'm not outing Michael. I'm going to say that there's a lot of people in the same thing who struggle as he does. Actually, most of the men do. And there's the same two things in all of them. They have a problem with a weak area in their emotions and in their being. There's weakness, okay? I don't mean that as an insulting way. There's weakness. The emotions drive, there's fear, there's anxiety, there's all of these weak elements, okay? Weakness, I mean have these elements. If you're weak, you have that. When you're strong, you do not suffer from anxiety. Strong people don't suffer from depression. Strong people don't suffer from fear. That's a strength. So you need to build strength, and you have to start to work on those weaknesses. Because you cannot lead properly in a state of anxiety and fear and doubt and worry and depression. Because that doesn't give people what they need. You know what people need? See, when people come to me, one of the reasons that the ones who do, get what they really need out of it is that when they come to me, they get strength. Okay? They interact with someone who knows exactly who he is, exactly where he's going, without any fear, without any anxiety, doesn't vacillate, knows what he's doing, where he's going. When we lead, if we don't have those, then people don't have the confidence in us because we're not confident in us. How can the person you're trying to lead, Michael, be confident if you're not confident? If you don't feel like you know what you're doing, all right? When you see me up here, one of the things that I know you can feel is that I feel confident that I know what I'm doing up here. And that comes across, okay? You know when someone comes up here and they're scared to death and they're not confident. We've had somebody do that not too many years ago. And they got up here and it was terrible. Why? Because they really were not confident to be up here. Okay? And you can feel the difference. It distracts you from the message. It also makes it harder to receive the message. So as a husband, as a parent, your children will receive better the more you strengthen, okay, those things or bring in the strengths that you don't have and start working on eliminating or minimizing those weak areas. So how do you do that? You work on continuously always personal development, okay? So you start listening to the great personal development gurus out there, and there's a ton of them out there that are very good. You read the books, you take programs. Try to minimize the programs if they cost money. There's plenty of stuff that's out there free, all right? I've paid for programs in my life, but most, like 90-something% of the stuff I've done was either the price of a book, okay, or free. All right, very, very inexpensive way to do this consistently. Yes, I've taken courses, etc., and even those weren't all that expensive, okay? But the main stuff, the main core stuff that helped me was very, very inexpensive or free. But every day I watch stuff. Every day, still. Not on Shabbat, but on Shabbat, I'm listening to other people, hopefully they're teaching this stuff that helps build that up. But every day, 6 days a week, we'll say, I'm listening to somebody at some point on YouTube, on TikTok, on something, on Audible as a book I took that I bought, so I'm always doing something to help me become more adept at what I do, or the things that I know I need to be able to do. Which means that two things have to happen. I've got to build the strengths and the skill sets that are necessary, and I need to eliminate or minimize the things that are dragging, hampering, or getting in the way. Did that answer the question?
So it sounds like a good first step for me is to add into what I'm listening to the content that's going to help me rewrite that internal dialogue.
Yes, okay, you have to, first of all, okay, let me give you everybody step one. This is step one. Okay, you'll get this in my class too, but this is step one. You have to decide what you want to be. Who do you want to be? Because you can't really work towards that until you know what it is that you want. You may not know what it fully looks like because you're not it, right? You're not that yet. But you know what you want to be. I want to be a strong, confident man in my family's life that they can look up to, who's emotionally stable, blah, blah. Write all this down. And then note all the things that you already are and the things that you aren't, and then go get the books and the tapes and the programs and the videos, whatever, that will work on those areas that you don't have that you know you need. Okay? But you first have to figure out who you want to become. I'm not saying it like in loose terms, okay, we all want to become Yeshua. But I mean, in whatever aspect you are. If you're a boss or an employer, there's so many books on how to be a great employer or boss or manager or whatever, leader. If you want to be a parent, lots of stuff you can learn about being a great father or a mother. Lots of stuff you can learn about being a great husband or a wife. Just go out there. There's a lot of garbage too. You're going to have to filter through a lot of junk. But just like when you listen to teachers out there teaching whatever they're teaching, you have to be looking for that one or two little nuggets that you go, that's a piece I could use. That's going to make a difference. Because I will quote, in all the things that I've ever quoted you personal development-wise, I'm quoting from like hundreds of teachers, but not everything they've ever said. Maybe the only one thing they said that I liked, that I still remember. Some of those teachers, I can't quote you more than one thing maybe. Other teachers, I can quote you 20 or 30 things because I thought they were better teachers. They had more things for me. What you're looking for is what you need to go to that next level up and that next level up in whatever area. But it doesn't start till you figure out what does it look like. What are you trying? You know what? Michelangelo, whoever it was, I once asked him, well, how do you make a sculpture of a horse? He says, I take a big block of granite and I chop away everything that doesn't look like a horse. He can't do that unless he knows he's trying to make a horse. What do you want to make of yourself? If you can't picture it, you don't know what it's supposed to look like, you don't know what to work towards. And then you got to chip away everything that doesn't look like it. And you got to add stuff that does look like it. Okay? All right.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. Good question. Oh, appreciate it. You couldn't hear that, but Janet was like, good answer. All right, Sierra.
I have two questions.
Okay.
The first one is it wrong to make lunch for your husband because it's being motherly?
No. Okay. That's a very supportive thing for a wife to do. Okay. The husband you're helping him to go out there and do the job he's going to do. Okay? Look. Shh. Not every husband wants that, by the way. Okay? I've never wanted anybody to make me lunch, to take with me or anything else, or breakfast, or anything else that particular way, because everybody's different. I appreciate and love it when my wife makes food, but I don't, but some people, the way their routine is, and part of their love language, if you woke up and made them a little bit of something, and they love that. It's part of your bonding. That's not the same thing as, because your husband is married to you. He's already figured out how to do all these other things, and now he's married to you. Your child, who needs to be able to take care of him or herself, needs to know how to make their own lunch. Even though somebody down the road may decide to be nice and make it for them, they're going to move out at some point and probably not move straight into marriage. That does happen. My daughter's going to do that. But that doesn't happen very often. So they have to learn how to take care of themselves. So that's the difference. Okay, next. So Jeremy, you're okay. She's going to make you lunch.
So you talked about Nadab and Abihu envying the role of leadership with their ego and their pride as the root thing. So I struggle with trusting people close to me, therefore I tend to control, which I'm thinking the root of that is ego and pride, but I would like if you could connect those two.
Okay. And I knowing you, I know actually what I think you really struggle with more, but also I think it's not just you, I think it's everybody in the same situation. Okay? All of you who try to control things, there may be a small piece of it that is you think you know better. That is a part of it. Your bigger part, though, is fear. Okay? And so you'd rather be the one to try and do what needs to be done, and even if you're wrong, at least you're the one that's wrong, than somebody else be wrong. So I don't know that the pride and ego is the primary part. It's the fear. Okay? So you jump in there because you're afraid to trust the other person to do it because it might go wrong, something bad will happen, or whatever. All right? Now, there is at times control issues because a person says, you can't do it, I'm going to do it, I do it better, this type of thing. And so there, it can play in where pride and ego comes in. Okay? So just know that it just depends on the situation. But the fear is always the bigger driver, in my opinion. That's what's under there. Because even if I know how to do it better than you do, if I'm red, as long as it works, I don't care, right? But see, very few people are red. The blues are all going to say, but it'll be done wrong. And right and wrong matters more than that. Doesn't matter if it works or not. It's got to be done right. And so that's where pride and ego comes in, because now you think you know better than the other person. And you still have this fear that if you don't jump in, it'll get done wrong. So that's, husbands and wives fight about this kind of stuff all the time because there's one or the other. Usually if it's the man's role to do and the wife jumps in, it's because she either doesn't trust him or she literally has the ego pride thing thinking she knows better. Now, even if she does know better, if it's his job or role that he's supposed to be in, he's never going to get there if you keep taking it from him. You have to get out of the way, let him make mistakes and learn and do it right. You know? If you give them the space, they will step up at some point and they'll run right past you in that area you were dominating or you were better at. Some of you ladies are like, man, I've studied the Bible, my husband does nothing, but you know what? If he ever got the spark, he'd catch up and run past you. Not because you're not smart, just because that's what men will tend to do once they finally get motivated to do. Okay? But if you demotivate them, and you're putting them down, and you're picking on them, and all that kind of stuff because they don't know it right now, then it's going to be tough for them to step up. It's going to be very tough. All right, Sierra?
So basically, you're saying that means it's okay. In order to fix this issue, you need to be okay with everything going wrong, even if it's emotionally challenging. Maybe with counsel thrown in there too.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, it's not that you need to be okay with everything going wrong. You have to be okay that you make the best decision possible and allow the person who should be doing it to do it, and that if it goes wrong, you can be okay with that. All right? But you have to have some trust that if you don't control it, not everything will go wrong. Some things might, but not everything, okay? Nobody's that bad or that good to get everything right or everything wrong. Okay? Matter of fact, I think one time I did this on purpose in school. I got every question wrong on the test and the teacher gave me 100. Because he said the only way you could have done that was to know the answer. I got busted. Okay? But that's the point. It's very hard to get everything wrong. All right? So, yeah, you have to be okay that some things will probably go wrong, and somehow that should be okay. Good. All right? Hopefully that helps a lot of people other than just Sierra. The live stream people are already having a cow think I'm never going to get to them, but that's okay. All right. Maisie? Listen, all you on live stream, we do this group therapy on a regular basis. You simply have to move here to be a part of the group therapy. Okay. And by the way, I know you're getting frustrated out there, but it's supposed to be frustrating. You should want to be here. There should be an advantage to being here. I'm not trying to disrespect you guys. I will still take some of your questions. I'm just saying is these people have made the effort to move their lives here. Sure, they should get a certain level of preferential treatment, if you understand what I'm saying. Okay? Because remember, you should all know this on live stream. Everybody here, except John Conabear, everybody here moved here to be a part of this, just about. Okay? Maybe one or two other people, I don't know. But out of the 200 people here, almost nobody lived here before. Okay? All right? So that deserves a lot of respect and a lot of attention. Okay, Maisie, who is also someone who moved here recently.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Miss Bakar. I love it when y'all do that. Rabbi, what if somebody is struggling to figure out what they want to be? Like they've tried this and tried that throughout their entire life, and they just continuously fail, or they're let down, or they're put down, and they just get to a place where I guess you could say they're lost in themselves. They can't figure it out.
All right. This comes up, believe it or not, quite often with probably people 35 plus. You know, it doesn't happen as much younger, but they start to get 35, 40, 45, and it really starts to be like life is not what they had hoped, and they don't know what to do, and they just don't know what they want. Okay, to understand, I'm going to give you two things. One is to understand why you're struggling. The other is to understand what you need to fix it. All right? To fix this, you need to have permission to be 6 again or 5. Because they're thinking, I'm going to be a fireman, I'm going to be president of the United States, I'm going to be a ballerina, I'm going to be an engineer, I'm going to be a rocket scientist, I'm going to be an astronaut. I mean, kids are thinking anything is possible. We have that beaten out of us by the time we get to be like 12, you know what I'm saying? Because everybody in the world is telling you that you're a failure, you can't do anything, you'll never make it, you know, that's a dream, let it go, forget it, whatever. But you need to re-embrace that child, so I'm giving you permission to dream big. What do you enjoy? Wouldn't it be great to be whatever? Just, you know, and stop worrying about if anybody's going to approve of it, like it, encourage you, whatever it is. I'll encourage you. Well, you're here. I'll encourage you. Okay? But the reason you don't know what you want is because it's been beaten out of you. So all of these things that you've tried is what you thought other people would approve of, other people would desire of you, other people suggested or pushed you in a direction of, and probably not a whole lot really what you really wanted to do. So you've lost touch with that part of you inside that wanted to be something. And so you have to find a way to reignite that, okay? So you have to kind of get back in that more childlike place of believing that almost anything is possible, okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is to understand, and I guess I answered the question when I said the reason why you're in this place is because everybody throughout the time, from the time you were a little child, has beaten that out of you. They've told you, you're no good, you can't make it, you're not smart enough, you're not this enough, you're not that enough, that's a pipe dream, nobody from our neighborhood ever did anything that did that or whatever. I mean, you're just told all this stuff. And so you have to sort of break free. Look, my wife was told not to go to college. Nobody in her family ever went to college. She was the first one to go to college. And so how dare you go do something none of us ever did, you know? And you know what she said? I'm going. And she went anyway, okay? Because she wanted to be a hygienist and she wanted to do these things. But she didn't listen. She knew what she got to the point where she said, I'm an adult, I'm going to do what I want to do. I have a vision, I have a dream. And by the way, it wasn't supported by everybody. So that has to be a thing that you have to figure out by being real with yourself. What do I really like, not like, desire? What would I like to do? Who do I really want to be? I know we all say, well, I want to be Yeshua. Like, none of you even knows what that really looks like, okay? Or feels like. We know kind of the mechanics of what that is all about. But it doesn't really motivate us like the way it could from an emotional point of view. But who's the Maisie you want to be? You know? If you could be anything in any, whatever role that might be, dream big. Just open up the possibilities. And you know what? Let's say you fall short, but you made the attempt, okay? You're still going to be so much more happy and joyful and whatever and fulfilled because you're going to have gotten close to it. You won't be where you are now, but you'll be almost right. I mean, who knows? Aim at something big. But you're not going to aim at anything big until you open up the possibilities. All right?
And that's why I'm here, and that's why I love you. Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. All right? Let me tell you something. One of the reasons why I'm here in front of you, because I had a dream. I'm not a dream, like a goal, okay? I had a dream as a little kid, young teenager, to do what Tony Robbins does, not realizing he was only a few years older than me. And so when I first was, 16, 17, 18 years old, and he was in his early 20s and already out there doing stuff, I had this dream to get out there and do what he was doing. I just wanted to motivate and positively impact people in big crowds, in big ways, and whatever. And it wasn't about me. It was just, I saw what he was doing for people and how they were being changed and helped. And I'm doing it. But I didn't know how that was going to end up. See, some of you are thinking, well, how can I dream big if I have no idea how that's going to happen? Because the how is the easy part. That'll come later. The wanting is the important part. Okay? Knowing what you want. And so you know what happened? Every decision I made, even though I couldn't see it, gave me skill sets that you guys benefit from. Because a lot of you come for financial advice. I have a lot of skill sets I developed over my years in financial stuff. A lot of you want to understand about business. I've got business. But you want to understand about, health issues. And I've got experiences that I got over the years so that when I finally got to what I'd always hoped to do, I have these things to do. If you had asked me, I never would have thought I'd be doing this. Okay? I wanted to be the one out there doing those programs like you see people like Tony Robbins doing. That's all I studied back then. I listened to everything I could get my hands on, read everything I could get my hands on. And I knew I could do it. I said, I know I can do that. And then Yahweh said, that's good. I got a plan for you. And you're going to use it. It's just not the way you thought you would. Okay? It took me to be 59 years old to do my first Tony Robbins type class, the Level Up class. I was so excited. Okay? I mean, that's like a bucket list thing I was just so happy to do. And I'm glad that it got such a positive response. But it has to start out with that dream. And I had no idea how it was ever going to happen, if it was ever going to happen. I just knew it's what I wanted to do. And then I did all kinds of other things along the way because I just kind of gave up on that dream a little bit or put it to the side. But it was always there. It was always there. All right, Sierra?
So, okay, so the verse that I'm going to quote is not related to the Torah study, but it is referencing the opposite, which is something you directly mentioned in this Torah study. So it's a Deuteronomy somewhere where you're supposed to do it with all your might and all your heart and all your being.
Deuteronomy 6:5.
6:5. So the things that you mentioned that would not get us to the kingdom, like a list that Janet was talking about, lazy, unmotivated, different stuff like that, could you say that maybe not putting in the effort to, I don't know, to come, okay, so in Ohio, we tend to get drowsy when we watch the Torah study. And I don't know what it's like all here and for everybody's experiences, but I was just wondering if we can at least put in the effort to like be alert or be present as we are able. Is that more closely aligned with what you were saying about knocking off like unmotivation or laziness or whatever the negative things were, the discipline to stay awake? Okay.
That's not what I'm talking about. And by the way, I do picture at times when I yell that somebody on a couch, someone went, who's trying to watch the Torah study, and they're like, what just happened? I felt some electricity down my spine. That was a different joke. So, look, this is late already at night for some people. I expect that not everybody could sit through this kind of thing at this time of night. If you're unmotivated, you won't ever go back and listen to it, okay? So the motivation has a lot more to do with what are you doing knowing that there was an actual physical limitation, and then you had to go back and then listen, okay? Because things happen where you end up missing something. Do you make the effort to go back and catch up with what you're missing? That's more the whole thing. Look, a lot of you are very emotionally challenged, but very few of you are doing a whole lot about it. Some of you are finally starting to. You're coming to me and you're starting to get some of that help. But that's something that needs to be dealt with at some point. You have to deal with your challenges and not just be totally debilitated by them. You have to find workarounds. You've got to find ways to handle it. You got to improve the areas that can be improved. Some things can't, well, then they can't, but then you can find ways to handle it by working around them. There has to be a workaround for you to figure. You have to just even if you never find one, you can't quit trying. Okay, you have to put in the effort that says, I'm not going to be afraid and completely always in anxiety and depression and fear and doubt and all this other stuff. I'm going to find a way to live with confidence and with emunah, with trust and belief. I don't know how to do it. I'm not that person. I'm going to try every day to figure out, learn something, study something, try a treatment, try a technique, something. But see, if you don't, it's because you're not putting in the effort. Okay? I'm not saying if you don't get the result. I don't care if you never get the result. He's going to watch you put in the effort. Remember, Deuteronomy 8:2 says he wants to see if it's in your heart to do this. Okay? So show him some effort. All right? Good.
So do you mind if I ask one more follow-up question?
Why not? Only because you went like this because of the answer you got. Okay? So since you were so excited by that, go ahead, ask a follow-up question.
Okay, so you mentioned anxiety and emotional messes and stuff like that and getting counsel and fixing that, and that's part of getting to the kingdom. So is it appropriate in an effort to maintain functionality in the rest of our lives and, in your life to limit counseling to say once a week?
In your case, Sierra? That would make Billy and my lives much easier. No, okay, so, no, darling, look. You're kind of like a daughter to me. I don't mind the calls. Your calls are most of the time legitimate in terms of there's a real legitimate meaning. There's an urgency that didn't need to wait. Don't react that way. Don't react that way. I mean, some of you call and you call it we get a lot of people saying something's an emergency when it's not. Like almost all of them. I don't think we've ever actually had an emergency call. We've had 75 of them a week, but not a single one of them was an emergency, okay? But to the person it was. So what I'm saying is most of the time you call, the reason you call, the need at that time and the timing were legitimate from that. It wasn't something you could wait once a week necessarily for. It was something you were going through. So when I said that, don't you guys interpret it funny like that. By legitimate meaning, it needed to be held, it needed to happen right then. Okay? Or at least quickly, not right that minute, but it had to be promptly addressed. All right? So when you say once a week, sure, if it's stuff that can wait. I do have people that I do talk to fairly regularly, and they have a nice list of things that don't need urgently to be dealt with, but need to be dealt with, and they can talk to me once a week, and so that would be helpful. Okay? But if you have needs, certainly call. And if it's something that's sort of important, say it's important. Don't say it's an emergency, because then we drop everything and try to call you, and then we get a little bit miffed when it's not an emergency, because we had to drop something that might have been more important than whatever you were going through because you said it was an emergency. Okay? But if you say, look, I really would like to talk to Rabbi today or tomorrow because it's something that's sort of pressing, then we make the effort to do that. Okay? One more. So everybody on live stream, don't get mad at me. It's No, it's me because I'm choosing to let her do it. Don't get mad at Sierra. All right.
So what's the difference between a need and an emotional like lack of shalom or whatever?
Okay.
That's inappropriate.
Right. So an urgency or an emergency is something that if it's not addressed, something really terrible might happen right that minute. Not you having a meltdown, but you call up because your spouse just threw you out of the house. You call up your child just, ended up going to the hospital, your spouse, when somebody went to the hospital. You call, there has to be a real emergency. Not just the fact that you're having a meltdown, okay? Because some of you have them all the time. I'm not saying that as a joke. I mean, you have them on a regular basis. I'm not saying you, but I'm saying there's enough of you that do that. You have meltdowns, and then so you think that everything's an emergency because you're having a meltdown. Because you need it to be fixed right then, but it doesn't need to be fixed right then. Okay? And if you actually were left alone, you might have to figure it out for yourself a little bit. Okay? And that's why you asked the question. You want to say, well, for us, would it actually be better to do that? Well, maybe it would a little bit. I would really be more reluctant to call, not because we don't want the calls. We handle every call we can handle. Okay? Even when we can't, we squeeze it in somehow. It's just that you are not benefiting as much if you call us as a crutch every time you're having a slight emotional challenge. All right? So hopefully that makes some sense. Okay? Now, in your case, we'll work out. You can text me and say you need prayer, and I'll type back that I'm praying, and that should be all you need at that moment. Okay? If it needs more than that, then you call and make an appointment. All right? All right, good. Okay.
But I can save it. It's very small.
All right, get your last small one. Look, hold on. Wait, you guys are laughing. Let me tell you why I love Sierra. Okay? Okay, this is what I always liked about you. When you first came here and you were going to marry Jeremy and everything, you were not quite in this yet. But you had a lot of questions, and your questions were always legitimate, like the kind of questions you would normally think a new person would ask. And you always received them well. In other words, you didn't argue. You said, okay. I mean, you didn't always agree with me. You said, okay, let me go back and chew on that. So, I mean, I always appreciated the way you asked questions and the way you handled them. So go ahead.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
So the clarification from the last thing you said is a week, every week, possibly too much?
Look, let's not wait. These are good questions. Look. Need is not the same for everybody, okay? And so let's just see how that works. You can try putting it off to a week and see if that works. It may work for you. You may need, realize that you can go even further than that. Or you may realize sometimes you need it to be shorter than that. Let's not try to make something so black and white that's not that predictable, okay? All right? I've got one daughter of the many daughters out here that normally meets with me every week, and she was so proud of the fact that she hasn't really needed me for the last week and a half or 2 weeks, because that's some growth, okay? And so let it just be what it is, and we'll kind of work with that, all right? All right, good. And that inspired Esther to come up.
Unrelated. With Nahab and Abihu.
You can't talk with your hand.
Strange.
You
okay,
there.
well, let me
Talk
use
with
this
your
hand.
other
This
hand.
hand. Okay, switch.
See, I wear a headset because I do talk with my hands. I mean, I'm all, So,
with them offering strange, unauthorized, you were explaining it's unauthorized things. And then with Aharon, he's not supposed to limit to more than wheat because they were doing unauthorized things.
Yes.
What is the appropriate reaction that you probably should, I don't know, the process portion of it? And then also, would it be wrong to be unauthorized? And then how do you process unauthorized things emotionally as a person close to somebody doing that?
All right, so what you need to understand is this section helps you with that. So Nadav and Abihu were doing something unauthorized. Who was it affecting? Well, it was affecting Yahweh and the people watching. So Yahweh handled it because he was the one it was directly about. So if something is done that's unauthorized that you really are not a part of and you're not the one that needed to be the one authorizing it, well, then you pretty much have to just stand on the sidelines and let it play out. Because this wasn't something that noticed that Moshe dealt with or Aaron dealt with. Yahweh dealt with it, okay? Because it was, he, the Creator, decided what the authorized way to do this was, and they were not doing it. He handled it. But then Moshe was instructed to tell Aaron, and they were told, don't mourn and weep and do this sort of thing with tearing your garments over this, because this was now witnessed by the people. So it was handled by the one with the authority, not by others. Moses didn't jump in and try to handle this. Yahweh handled it directly, okay? And then, by the way, if you're in an authority structure, you're in a vertical structure, you got to make sure that before you wield that kind of authority, that's actually your authority to wield. If it really belongs to somebody above you, let them do it. Okay, and if they choose not to do it, well, that's just too bad, is it? It was their choice. And you see this go sideways a lot. Somebody in the middle thinks something should have been handled, so they jump in and handle it. I had some people working for me who used to do that. They don't work for me anymore. Okay? I had a few people working for me who don't work for me anymore, who I used to have to argue with them and tell them, this is mine, not yours. You can't put your vision on it. This is mine, not yours. But they would act like, because they would think it would be theirs. See, Yahweh was saying, this is mine, not yours. And then he says, and by the way, since all the people were watching this, you can't be acting in any way that shows that you had a problem with what I did. Let that be a lesson also in the vertical. If I make a decision, then you're in the middle of all this, okay, between me and whoever I'm at, you cannot act in a way that shows disrespect for what I did. That would be not acceptable. That's what Yahweh said there. He said, look, you go ahead and start tearing your garments. It's going to look like you had a problem with what I did. And you cannot do that. Okay? All right. Did that answer the question, Esther? Okay. I mean, I kind of know more about what you're kind of getting at, so there wasn't any way for me to actually address that, but, okay? But what you're asking about, there's nothing anybody can do about that. All right? It was just unauthorized and dumb, and there's nothing we can do about it. All right. Nigel.
Shalom, Rabbi.
You know, it's so weird. I'm getting used to you and Richard Bill both being here, and but at the same time, I'm not used to you being here. It's like I'm like excited, and I know that at some point you're both going to be here all the time, so it's kind of exciting. Yeah.
That's a good prediction. I'll live with that.
What was that?
That's a very good prediction. I'll live with that.
Yes.
Yes, good.
Well, it wasn't a hard prediction since you told me you were coming.
So. All right, so this is...
Wow, I'm a genius predictor. He told me he's coming, and I predicted he's coming. Okay, there you go.
All right, so a bit of continuation of group theory.
Wait a minute, I'm predicting somebody's having a problem with their back. There's somebody
me.
out there with a problem in their relationships. And, okay, never mind. I'll leave that to the guys on Sunday. They can do all that. All right, Nigel.
Yes. So this is a bit of continuation.
Maybe a spleen or two out there. All right.
Yeah, so as we continue the group therapy, so just taking it to the other side. So let's say you are someone who accepts your responsibility of leader of something, and you have a few issues going on, that challenges that you have to deal with. But within those challenges, you have your own emotional disposition, but you set it aside often enough, or always, to deal with the challenges that you must deal with.
Right.
What are the risks to doing that?
What do you mean as far as risks? Personally, to putting the emotion aside?
Yeah, to just keep putting that aside, how you really feel about a situation, but you always put it aside to deal with what must be dealt with, knowing your responsibility, but you never deal with how you really feel about it.
All right.
Are there any risks to that?
I think I understand. All right, so what you have to understand is, Nigel and all of you, there's a difference between putting something aside, but you're just still holding it, and actually just deciding not to have that. Like you're actually saying, I'm releasing that emotion. Because otherwise you end up like the white personality and you will explode. Because white personalities try to put aside emotion as long as they can finally do it until they can't take it anymore and they go boom. Okay? Of the color code personalities, I'm not talking about skin color here. There's always going to be some new person watching. What is he talking about? Okay? But that personality that has an aversion to conflict will tend to suppress for expediency and to avoid conflict. So Nigel, you're talking about suppressing for expediency so you can get something done. But suppressing emotion is unhealthy. Okay? Because it will come back and yes, it will be a negative something. It'll hurt you in some way. All right? So if I choose not to have an emotional reaction to something because I have to deal with other things, and if I get emotional, I won't be able to deal with it, I am choosing never to have that. Okay? I'm just choosing that is just not going to be. So I'm not holding it at bay or holding it in a little box or something. I just have chosen not to do it. So it is released, so to speak. Okay? Now, so that's a big part of this. Now, by the way, there is an unhealthy version of that too, which is, for example, some of us are really good in emergencies and terrible things are happening, and you do need to allow yourself to feel those terrible things at some point, and you have to then come back and give yourself permission to go through the process. Okay? So like when my wife was having a miscarriage many years ago, I felt nothing about that because I was busy making sure she was okay and handling all the things about her going through the horror of all of that. But then at some point when she was finally okay, I had to allow myself to cry. All right? Now, knowing full well that if I had cried any earlier, it would have destroyed her, because she was already going through enough, and watching me cry was just not going to be something she could deal with. So, but I was then finally given permission to cry, not just by her, but by myself, saying, now it's safe and appropriate to do that. Because that would have been unhealthy for me not to experience that emotion. So some emotion needs to be put on the side, knowing you'll need to deal with it at some point. When you're dealing with job nonsense and everything else, that stuff just needs to be thrown out. Okay? There's nothing healthy about that ever. All right? But when you're dealing with loss, okay, and going through the grieving process, you may not be functional to deal with that emotion until the crisis has been over for a period of time. But then you still must give yourself permission to go through the process. All right, did that answer the question, Nigel? All right, good. All right, you look familiar. Have you been up here before?
Is this okay?
This is the Rabbi and Sierra Show, brought to you by, all right. Go ahead.
Okay. So we were talking about all the counseling and different
You got to
stuff.
keep that mic right in front of your mouth.
So on the difference between the people needing to counsel, and then on the other hand, you talk about all the time how you can't understand how a lot of people won't counsel or think they don't need it. So where is the fine line between thinking, oh, it's been a while and I think I'm good? Like, what's the difference between that and, like, I don't know, what
Okay.
I do
All right.
so far.
That's a good question. All right. Look, this is the same way you should be dealing with your child when he gets a little bit older, okay? The way that it works is, I'm okay with those of you that don't counsel that should, I'm okay with you coming and swinging the pendulum and coming too much. And then allowing me to tell you that you should handle yourself, this you should handle yourself. So that's better than you not coming at all when you should. So over time, with your child, the same thing. The child keeps coming, you say, well, actually, you should be able to handle it. Go, you can do it. Go, well, you deal with it. You can handle that. But mommy, but daddy, no. I know you can do this. You know what to do. Go do it. As opposed to you handling everything. So over time, if you come to me, and over time, I'll start to say, that's something you can now handle yourself. That's something you don't really need to come to me about. So don't overthink and edit. That's what you guys are doing, though. You're pre-editing. Let me do that. Come to me and let me tell you that's something that's not for me to handle. That's something you should be handling yourself. And then you'll learn that and you'll stop coming to me with those things. Okay? But until then, just keep bringing the stuff as you need to.
So basically just come until you push us away.
No, not push away.
But only in certain areas.
No, encourage you that this is something you should be able to handle yourself now. I've already given you tools, we've already talked about it, whatever it is, right? And so when you come to me, I was like, wait a minute, we've talked about this before. I've already given you that information. You know what to do, now go back and do it. And then maybe by the next time it comes up, you'll be like, oh, wait a minute, Rabbi's just gonna send me back and tell me to handle it because it's something I should know. Okay, now if it's something that when I send you back and you really can't handle it, then you need to come for like a retraining. We'll have another counsel and go over it again just to make sure you know what you're doing, right? But please don't over-edit and think for me what's appropriate and not appropriate. Just come. I'll let you know if it's something that, and if you say something's an emergency, either I or Elder will tell you that in pretty strong terms that it wasn't an emergency. Okay, so make sure it is an emergency. And we have emergencies that come up. Okay, but those people usually find a way to call us properly. And by the way, if it's an emergency, we have an emergency line. Okay, when you call, you push a certain, and you get the emergency line, and it leaves a message, and somebody will get it. You don't text Elder directly, okay? You don't text me. Well, none of you really should be texting me at all, unless you're a daughter or a family member or somebody that I've got a son or two now too, whatever. Okay, you'll be able to text me because we have that relationship. I'm trying to be that man in your life that you needed, right? So you should have access, but you got to be respectful about the access. All right? But some of you are texting Billy 2 or 3 times in a day and saying it's an emergency when you didn't call the line. Okay? And he never gave you permission to do that. The few people who should be texting me directly have that permission. They know who they are. All right? And then those of you that do have that, please stop overthinking it. Okay? I'll let you know if you're using it incorrectly. Don't worry about that. And don't get upset if I kind of tell you, no, that was not what you needed to do. Just say, I'm sorry, and fix it and do it. And just keep. But I want you to keep going. How else are you going to learn if I don't ever tell you no? All right. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm glad that we got that done, at least until the next question. All right. Michael, this was supposed to be an easy Torah portion about kashrut. What happened?
So this kind of spins off of what Nigel was asking about, because I have a white personality, so I don't have like the way to move those emotions to the side or just decide not to experience them. How do you develop that? Because all I have is this reservoir that just explodes periodically.
Okay. So the main point, the secondary point, the main point of the color personality test was to simply get to understand why you're like you are. Okay. The second main point, the secondary point, was to recognize that the areas that you are strong in and the areas that you're weak in, you can then work consciously towards maneuvering with those. In other words, recognizing that as a white-colored personality, the personality color white, which is about peace and avoiding conflict and independence and all this other stuff, that there are some parts of that that are not desirable all the time. Every color has aspects that are not desirable and applicable well in every... Now, when it comes to a relationship, generally you'll have less conflict because you have that personality. You'll try to avoid it. However, if the conflict is too consistent, you're going to blow up. Now, you need to then embrace and realize, I need more of the color that would help me handle that. In this case, red. Okay, because the red personality would help you recognize that if I don't deal with this now, I have to be okay with it then. Okay? Let me speak red to you right now. In almost everything you go through, there are 3 choices. And the third one, in my opinion, is not acceptable, but that's the one you normally pick. Okay? Choice number 1, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to deal with it. Choice number 2, I'm going to let it be what it is, but I'm not going to whine or complain or be upset about it. I'm just going to allow that it is. Choice number 3, I'm going to allow that it is and be upset about it. It's a terrible choice. So you've got to now realize your problem is that you're not doing choice number 1 when you should, which is to deal with it right there before it accumulates to the blow up. You can always choose choice number 2, which is if I'm not going to say anything, you also have to not hold on to it. Okay? Because I've had to talk to people in their marriages where somebody cheated or somebody did something that breached trust, okay? This has happened in a lot of conversations I've had in marriages in the last 20 years, where there was a breach of trust. And I ask each one, well, do you want to still be married? They both say yes. And then I hear them going back and forth still, and it's clear that the person who had their trust breached, the person who was the victim there, is still not trusting the other person. And I tell them, if you're not going to trust the person, then quit. Oh, but how do I know? You don't know you can trust them. But not trusting them, this can't work. You see what I'm saying? You have to, if you're going to, so I told them, you fix this by trusting. Well, what if it doesn't work? Well, then it doesn't work. It can't work the other way. Okay? Or you go ahead and get a divorce. But not trusting and staying together, and it's miserable for everybody. Okay? So I've used this line a lot. You either fix it, you work towards some solution, or you accept that it is what it is, but don't get upset about it anymore. Just accept it as part of the deal. Or you have the third choice, which is awful. It's miserable. It's hell. It's torture, which is you accept something is never going to be what you want, and you're going to sit there and just be miserable about it. Why would you do that? Fix it or accept it. Those are your two choices. So with you need to start embracing those two possible options that are really hard for you. If you're going to not say anything or deal with something, then you have to release it. So you have to figure out what kind of mindset you have to learn the skill of releasing, because it's not your natural default way of doing things, okay? Then the second part of it is deal with it more quickly. Address it before you get so upset, okay? Now, again, when we do the personality stuff, it's to show you what your normal default way of response is, which simply means anything else is going to take a little bit or a lot of effort, but it can be done. It's just going to take you out of your normal way of doing things, out of your comfort zone. All right? And so, if I'm dealing with my wife who's so blue, I know if we're doing certain things that doing it right is going to be important, even though good enough would work for me. Okay? I'm red, as long as it works. But I have to step out of that if I know we're doing something together, because she's going to want it done right. And so I have to now think differently if I want to work with her, and I want that to work for her because I want that to work. You know what I'm saying? I have a choice. I'm either going to fight with her over it being good enough, or I'm going to learn how to do it so that we can both be happy, because it'll still be good, but it'll be right the way she wants, and then we're both happy. But I have to come out of my comfort zone to do that, because it's going to take longer, and my red default doesn't want to take longer. Okay? Okay? Because doing it right takes time. Okay? My stuff's over here, and it needs to be in the drawers. So I pick it up, put it in the drawers. No, it has to go in the right drawer. It's got to be put the right way. Now, if in a relationship I want her to be happy, I have to figure out how to embrace that a little bit and be able to do that, even though I don't really care. It's not what I would want to do. So when you're dealing with that struggle of you're having a problem with your wife or with your children, and so you keep pushing it off because you don't want to deal with it, you push it off because you don't want to deal with it, well, you have to know that you're creating a problem that's going to explode. So you have to figure out it's going to take longer or it's not going to be fun, but if I deal with it now, before I get so upset, it'll be better. Or if I just release it, it'll just be better. Some things you should release, some things you should deal with right away. Okay?
Okay. Thank you,
All
Rabbi.
right? You're welcome. I mean, it's all about the goal, all right? And so, look, like I used the example with my wife. I'm married. I want this to be good. So that means that I have to adjust to her. She has to adjust to me, all right? Okay? By the way, part of that adjusting also could be, if it has to do with her, I should be more about what works for her. If it has to do with me, it should be more about what works for me, if you understand what I'm saying. If it's my thing, then it doesn't have to be the way you want it to be. If it's your thing, I need to know it should really be the way you want it to be. But you have to be okay with mine not being, and I have to be okay with yours being that way. But you have to adjust to each other. That's part of how it works. Problem is, we tend to want to control the other person to do it your way. Then it goes badly. All right? All right. Live stream, it's already 11 o'clock. Did I tell you that we're starting that 24-hour thing today? No. Hey, I'm not even teaching tomorrow. Rabbi Tom is. I'm good. So, not that matters, because I wake up and just work anyway. But anyway, go ahead. All right. You guys don't have anything on the live stream, right? I answered all your questions. Wait, we have no microphone working over there.
Way to go, Ben. No, we only got about 30.
Ben, you're fired. All right.
We only got about 30 or 40 questions, so it should be quick.
How many? 30 or 40?
Yeah.
We got 6 minutes. We can do it.
Oh, yeah, we got it. First one, Tracy Thomas Question 1 from MTOI. Say, Rabbi, please provide clarity on the difference between Leviticus 11:7, unclean, and Leviticus 11:10, abomination.
Okay, so it's one thing to say something's unclean because of the way it affects your status. The other thing is how you should think of it. It's an abomination. He says in the next verse, he says, you shall abominate these things, right? Okay, so these things are an abomination. It's the way you should look at them. So one of the strongest levels of you should not like it is called abomination. The 6 things Yahweh hates, the 7th is an abomination. It's like the highest level of you should dislike it and avoid it, all right? However, if you do accidentally do any of these things, it only makes you unclean. But you'd be less likely to do something that makes you unclean if you think of it as being abominable. All right, next.
Okay, from Wendy Nicholson, Leviticus 10, verse 19. Why did Aaron say, if I had eaten the sin offering today, should it have been accepted in the sight of Yahweh? Was this because of the death of Nadab and Abihu?
Okay, I've not really studied that verse out. It has a lot to do with the instructions about the sin offering, okay? And so as to who ate it and everything else, which I don't have off the top of my head, so I don't know what to answer you for that one.
Okay, from Torah Prepper, Simon Gibbs. When looking at unclean or not food items listed here, should we consider chemicals and GMOs as not food for us because they are not included in the food for you list?
Okay, so look, there is lots of reasons to avoid these things, and they're not necessarily just because the Torah says in some way. There are kind of instructions where you should be the caretaker of what he gave you, and he gave you a body. So you should be caring for that body he gave you. You know, it's funny. Some of you will take care of a brand new car better than you take care of yourself. You'll make sure that car is clean. You'll make sure nobody puts anything unclean in it, no mud or dirt, and you'll wash it regularly. You'll do all these other things. You'll do all the maintenance on it. And you let go to, like, whatever. I mean, you don't take care of yourself. And you'll eat anything. You put any kind of fuel in. You don't care. Some of you care a lot about which gas you get for your car. You can care less what you eat. So when it comes to GMOs are genetically modified organisms. Well, or that means that they are not what he made them to be. So I can see certainly a Torah issue eating stuff that's been modified that wasn't the way he intended it to be. Okay? So I avoid GMO things. It's very hard to avoid them completely, but I would certainly avoid them when possible. All right? Same thing with things that are, in the produced foods, right? The processed foods. There's a lot of things in there that, are probably just not good for you. You should understand them, and you would avoid them. So these things are not going to make you unclean in terms of the status. Of course, we don't have a temple, so that status is kind of, not applicable at the moment. But these are things that would be ill-advised. Okay, I would avoid them. Okay, look, I watch Orthodox Jews smoke like chimneys on, on 47th Street in New York, in the Diamond District, and there's no scripture against smoking a cigarette. It is dumb. It is very unhealthy. Everybody knows it. There's no debate about that. I mean, there are lots of things out there that there's debate about healthy or not healthy. There's no debate on that. But there's no real Torah scripture or anything that says you can't. And so sometimes we need to go beyond that and just use some wisdom, because there is some Torah instruction about being wise. Okay? And having discernment. So that would be my answer for Mr. Simon Gibbs. Okay, next.
Okay, from Tracy Thomas, question 2. Says, Rabbi, please advise why pigs are listed as unclean in Leviticus 11:7, But Isaiah 66:17 refers to as an abomination. I think that's
We just covered that pretty
same
much.
thing, yeah.
Okay? One is about what does to your status, the other is about how you should feel about it. Okay? So we're getting all of our questions from Australia and New Zealand, which is good because it's Sabbath, right? Smack great for them.
I think she's competing with Sierra.
She's the New Zealand version. Tracy always has got questions. And her questions, just like Sierra's, are always good questions. So,
Okay, from Tracy. Question 3. Rabbi, please provide context. Torah said, Torah says pigs are unclean, Leviticus 11:7, but in Isaiah 63 it mentions grain offerings and pig's blood. Clearly wrong, but what is happening here?
all right. Sometimes I think these things are easier if you just simply read the verse. Okay, so what's going on here? All right. All right, so in chapter 66, he says, in verse 3, he says, whoever slaughters the bull slays a man. Whoever slaughters the lamb breaks a dog's neck. Whoever brings a grain offering, pig's blood. Whoever burns incense blesses an idol. He's comparing something that's good and showing that because of the way you're doing it, it's like this thing that's bad. So there's no real confusion here. It's not like he's saying that he's saying, look, he says, if you're slaughtering a bull, you're slaying a man. Well, that's not anywhere in Leviticus. Because it's talking about that you are doing these things, but really you're doing this unclean thing. Whoever burns incense blesses an idol? So there's more going on in chapter 66. And so we have to understand the context here. He's comparing things that they do and saying that because of the way you're approaching it or the way you're doing it, it's as if you're doing it this unclean way or using it as an inappropriate purpose. Okay? So there's no confusion by bringing pig's blood into a grain offering. All right? Just like incense would not be burned to idols unless that was actually the mixing that was going on. Okay?
Okay, Tracy, question 4 says, Rabbi, please advise, why an unclean animal makes us unclean until evening, and if there's a temple, would a sacrifice be required?
No, I think when you interact with an unclean animal, or one that's not food, it makes you unclean till evening. I don't remember if there's a washing involved in anything, but there are no offerings that are necessarily made for that. I mean, you could come into that kind of a context simply because an animal dies on your property, or you had to kill it because it was something you did not need to have on your property, but it wasn't something you could eat, so you killed it, and then you had to remove it, and then you came into contact with it, and so therefore it made you unclean. So, in other words, it didn't make you in that state of tamei for very long, and it didn't have a lot of requirement as to what you needed to do to fix the problem. It just rendered you unclean for a short period of time. All right, next.
Okay, Ashley Condon, thank you for a wonderful teaching. Chapter 11, verse 35, if I clean my appliances but kept them when I bought my house, is this permissible, or shall I sell what I have and buy new?
I have to go back and see what that verse has to do with that, because I don't really see where that is. Okay, 11:35. Oh, I see what you're talking about. Look, when you're talking about 11:35 is talking about whatever of their carcasses becomes unclean on an oven or a cooking range, and it's broken down, they're unclean. Okay. I know you're thinking about modern day stuff, a cooking range. What do you think a cooking range was in Moses' day? It was like a stone slab or some sort of a pottery clay. It was a porous material. It wasn't made out of stainless steel or metal or any of those kind of things. It was made out of something that was porous. And if it was porous, it means that stuff would get into it. So pottery type things, okay? And so, no, your appliances are fine. If you clean them, they're fine. What you can't keep, okay, especially if you don't know, who had them and what they did with them, are the things that are made still out of pottery, okay? Things that are not sealed where nothing penetrates. Glass is fine. Plastic mostly is fine. Metal mostly is fine. I mean, it's not the kind of stuff that tends to be porous, all right? Next.
Tracy Thomas, question 5. Rabbi, please advise.
She is trying to compete with you.
If we touch an abomination, are we also unclean until the evening? Or if there's a temple?
I kind of answered that one already, okay? If you touch something that's abominable, yes, you're unclean till evening. If it's specifically talking about these type of abominations. Of course, you're told that other things are abominations too, like the one creating division among brothers, okay? All right, so that one doesn't make you unclean till evening. It's just something that he looks at in this highest level of bad, wrong, disgusting, revolting. Don't do this, okay? And as far as the sacrifice, I don't remember there being one for this.
Okay, from Periandri says, I'm struggling. It's a question about mixing the meat and dairy. What is the opinion on that, please?
Okay. I was going to make a joke, but I won't make a joke. All right, so look, there is no messianic opinion, okay? There's a biblical opinion. Because if you listen to the earlier part of this discussion, everything has to be consistent all the way through. See, you're looking from a Christian point of view, that somehow there's a different opinion now because we're in the messianic time than before. Okay, so there is no messianic opinion, there's just an opinion. Is that fair? Okay, and so that opinion is that you can eat a cheeseburger. Probably not a good idea digestively so much, but you could, okay, there's no requirement to not eat these things together. I know the Jews obsess on this. Okay, I've had a discussion with some Orthodox ones about it. But the bottom line is that in Genesis, when Abraham entertains Yahweh, he makes him a slaughtered, the fatted calf, so to speak, and then he puts the milk and the curds and the meat and everything before him, and Yahweh eats it. So he had milk, he had dairy and meat together, all right? And so what we do have is a few times, 3, I believe to be specific, where it says, do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. Why don't we just stick with the Peshat understanding of that, the simple understanding, okay, which is don't cook a kid in its mother's milk, okay? Which doesn't mean that it means that you can still have your chicken parmesan, okay? All right, if that's what you want to do. There's no scriptural, as far as I can see, instruction against having dairy and meat together. All right, next. But that's not a messianic interpretation. That interpretation actually really comes from Genesis 18, yeah. Okay, Genesis 18. All right, so you can see that in around verse 8. All right, he took the curds, the milk, and the calf, which he prepared, set it before them being Yahweh and the other messengers, and he stood by the tree while they ate it. All right? Of course, the Jews will say, well, that's before Moses. Well, Yahweh doesn't change, so it's not relevant that it's before Moses. Noah put clean and unclean animals and knew which were which on the ark. That was before Moses. That was before Leviticus 11. Okay? So that's not relevant. So this is a Torah opinion, not a messianic opinion. All right, next.
Okay, from Mark S. Leviticus 11, verse 10, is seaweed, kelp, algae, kombu food, can it be eaten?
Okay, those are, most of those things, the seaweed, the kelp, this is ocean vegetables. Okay? Soggy lettuce. I don't know what to tell you. Okay? So, salty, soggy lettuce. Look, you can eat seaweed, kelp, that's not algae. Those are all good, very healthy for you. Okay? Not really sure what kombu is. I think, unless you're talking about kombucha, but I don't know what kombu is. But yes, you can eat the seaweed, kelp, and the algae. Okay? Blue-green algae is very good for you. All right? Next.
From Ashley Condon, if we are given a wrong order through the drive-through, i.e. a bacon burger, and they say that they can't take it back, what do?
You don't eat it, you throw it out. But if they can't take it back and it's wrong, and then they still need to give you a new one, or if they don't, then you just don't go buy food there anymore. I've never had that problem. I mean, anytime they've made my order wrong, they'll either take it back, which they're really not allowed to. Board of Health says they can't take food back. Okay, so it's funny to me when I'm at a restaurant, complain about something, they take it back and I'll give you a new one. They should just leave it on the table and throw it out later, or take it and throw it out. But to take it back, they're just thinking that, well, you're probably just scamming, so you get 2 of them. Well, that happens probably occasionally with people in restaurants, but they really can't, by Board of Health standards, take any food once it's been handed to you back. Okay, that breaks health rules. All right. But what you can do, and I almost always have, is they will give me a new one. I have had many a burger made not the way I asked for it, and not usually necessarily with unclean stuff, but that does happen sometimes. And I say, I specifically said no bacon on that, okay? Because maybe it was the type of burger I wanted that had everything I wanted, but not the bacon. So I said, can you not just put bacon? And they forgot. That happens. And I say, well, take it back. And so they'll either take it back, they'll leave it, whatever. They will almost always make you a new one. Or they'll just take it off the bill or whatever. And if they don't do any of that stuff, you do not need to go back there again. Okay? And what I would do is talk to a manager. Look, when you go and deal with these things, be polite. Be strong but polite. Look, I talk to managers in restaurants all the time because they have people messing up all the time. And I tell them, because I'm a manager, and I call them over and I say, look, I just say it this way. I say, look, I called you over because I thought you would want to know. I'm not upset because stuff goes wrong, but I want you to know that this is what went wrong, so that maybe you'd want to know about it. You can fix it going forward or whatever. And they almost always appreciate that and are very glad to take it off the bill or do some other way to compensate without me asking. But I'm not screaming at them like I'm offended. I told them no bacon, and they brought back, I can't have this. No, see, that's never going to get you what you want. Okay? I have a manager now at a particular restaurant, because of all the things that have gone wrong over the years and how patient I've been with them, that literally comes over to me and checks to make sure, how are we doing? Like, I'm like one of his, measuring sticks now with things that come. As a matter of fact, they got a new product coming in, some pizza thing. He says he wants to make sure I try it because he wants to know what I think about it. But I've always been respectful. I've complained a lot, so to speak. In other words, I pointed out problems a lot. But I've never done it in a disrespectful way, okay? And so they almost always handle it well, because the managers want you to come back and give you business. He's taken the whole meal, so come back and have a free meal and all kinds of stuff, all right? And so, that's what a good manager will do. All right, next. But no, you can't eat it, though, if you get the wrong thing. And by the way, just taking the bacon off of it doesn't fix the problem. Okay? Which is why I'd rather them leave me the one they messed up, so I know they give me a new one. Okay? All right, go ahead.
Okay, from line upon line for today. So, Rabbi, coming in contact with something unclean, animal or otherwise, is more of a concern if there's a temple, like farm animals, pets, dead animals, and people.
Yes.
Okay, from Mark S., Leviticus 11:8, can we eat food, i.e. beef, cooked in a convection oven that was previously used for roast pork? I think we already answered that.
Look, all of those are things that should be cleanable, okay? If they can be cleaned, they can be used. Okay? Only problem is if cleaning them doesn't really clean them, if they are made out of porous material. okay? I mean, there are some, what was it, Pampered Chef? Who makes all that really good stoneware? Like, okay, they make some great cooking stuff, but it's out of stoneware, out of like things that is very porous. And it's fabulous stuff, but if it's been used with unclean stuff on it, you can't use it because you can't clean it good enough, all right? So it falls into the verse that says you have to break it or throw it out. Okay, you can't use it. The reason they say break it is because so nobody would use it. They didn't have garbage like we have now where you dump it in there, nobody's ever going to get it. It's just going to go to the dump and get broken anyway. All right, next.
Okay, from Tracy Thomas.
Question number 6.
Number 6.
Actually says it on there, Q6. I see that. That's funny.
She also put on here earlier, just a little bit ago, that their group is thanking you for answering all their questions.
Well, good.
So why is a swarming creature an abomination? Leviticus 11:44. What does it mean? Do not defile ourselves with a swarming creature. How is that possible?
All right. First of all, you've all seen swarming creatures. They are pretty abominable. You've been chased by a bunch of gnats, mosquitoes. Yeah. That's kind of... All right, let's look at the verse. 11:41, and every creeping creature that creeps on the earth is an abomination. It is not eaten. Again, it's an abomination from the point of view that you would even think of it as food. Okay? It has a purpose, but as food, it's an abomination. He wants you to think really strongly against the idea of eating those things. All right? And then we get to verse, what was the other one? 44. For I am Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall set yourself apart, and you shall be set apart. For I am set apart, and do not defile yourselves with any creeping creature that creeps on the earth. So apparently there was a problem where they were eating bugs and things, okay? And snakes and whatever. I mean, they were just eating stuff that they shouldn't have been eating. When Yahweh is extra strong about something, most of the time it's because that something is happening fairly regularly. He's less strong about things that don't happen very often. Not that he's not as serious about it, he just doesn't hit it as hard. He'll hit it and expect that that's enough to hit it. But with stuff that they were doing all the time, that's why in so many chapters through so many prophets you hear him talking about things like idolatry, because they kept doing it. Other stuff he didn't hit on because it wasn't a struggle. You know what? Yeshua never talks about the Sabbath in any kind of real instructional way. You know why? Because it wasn't a problem then. There was other issues that were a bigger problem. Because Christians will say, well, he never talked about the Sabbath. He talked about murder. He talked about adultery. He talked about... Because they were having a problem with that. They weren't struggling with Shabbat. And so he addressed the things they were struggling with. All right, next.
Okay, from Yanni, Leviticus 11, verse 10, fins and scales. Leviticus 11:12, fins or scales. I only eat fish that had fins and scales after the evil fish killers killed them. Why do Leviticus 11:12 say or?
Okay, now again, look at verse 10. I don't mean to get frustrated, but some of these questions are starting to get wear on me a little bit. It's simple and straightforward from the answers I've already given. But all that have not fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers, all that move in the waters, and any living creature which is in the waters, they are an abomination to you. Okay, all that don't have fins and scales. Okay? Then he gets to verse 12. And all that do not have fins or scales, because you need to have both. So he's saying those that don't have fins and scales, those are definitely an abomination. Those that have fins or scales are the missing one. It's simply just making sure that you understand that they have to have both. There are some that have neither, and some that only have one or the other. Is that simple enough? Okay. So he's saying those things that don't have fins and scales, meaning they don't have either of them. Those are an abomination. Those that only have one of them, those are an abomination. Okay? Next.
Okay, Rabbi. Last question. From Shikara L. Arnold. Should we be checking the ingredients in all foods we buy and contacting manufacturers to find out specifics about things like gelatin or cheese enzymes?
Yes. And by the way, they're almost, in my experience, always very helpful to answer your questions. I mean, I know lots of people that have contacted manufacturers, and they always seem very happy and reasonable and answer the questions. Never a problem, okay? But yes, you should check. And by the way, once you've checked, you start to learn which companies and which ingredients are problematic, okay? And then you start to know what to buy and what you can't buy, all right? All right, that's it. Good study, everyone. Almost a 4-hour marathon. Which, considering every night we counseled until after midnight, this is an early night. Okay, so, all right, fantastic. Now let's go ahead and get someone to close us in prayer, and we'll be all good to go. Who opened us? I wasn't in here. Oh, John Reich did. That's right. Okay. Let's see. I want to get somebody who wasn't up here yet. Well, Thomas, you can come close us. You didn't ask a question today, so I'll let you come up and close us. Okay, so if you guys want to go ahead and rise. We're back to rise. Okay. Unleavened bread is over. We can rise again. Okay. And Thomas is going to go ahead and close us in prayer.
Abba, Father, as we come before you, we thank you for this, another opportunity to gather in your place of worship. We pray now, Father God, that you would be with all the ones that have turned out and the ones that have driven. We pray you keep your mercy door open to them. We ask that you would continue to be with our leadership, Father, and we praise you and we thank you for it. In Yeshua Mashiach. Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right, so anybody wants to come on this side of the room? And we'll go ahead and wave goodbye to everybody out there that stayed up this late and all of you in Wellington, New Zealand, who are just having a great time with your service today. I'm glad we're being a part of your Shabbat service.
Here I am.
All right. This is Constantine. He's not mine, but he's mine. He understood. He understood. All right, so everybody look over at the camera. We're going to wish everybody out there a Shabbat Shalom and tell them that we love them. Okay, on 3. Wait, we got one more. Okay, come on in. You can come over here. Good. All right, so on 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3.